oh, snap. I don't know if my friends back at the temple are going to be cool with this. I was like, from what I understand, this is a personal process. This is my choice.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's family.
What love?
We're one family. The whole Guru Varga want that, for us to understand that. That is advancement. Hare Krishna, friends.
Hello.
Greetings. My name is Malini Dasi.
And I'm Tulsi Devi Dasi.
And we are Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Hare Krishna devotees who are disciples of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. And we're feeling really inspired to share more about our Gurudev, making him more accessible to those who are interested in knowing about him. And so we are going to share a bit about his life, his mood, his teachings.
Our experiences with him.
And our own experiences with him.
Yes. And this topic has been something that has been on our mind for many years, actually. The purpose of this video is that we hope to bring healing and hopefully clearing up any misunderstandings and just bringing a sense of peace and togetherness throughout our Gaudiya Vaishnava family.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
Worldwide, exactly.
Yes.
And so our Srila Gurudev, he grew up as a Vaishnav. He was a Ram Bhakta, actually, in just about 1920. And he was born in Bihar, in the northern part of India. And growing up, he was always listening to the Ramayana, Hanuman, Sita Ram, so absorbed in that. And there's some miracle stories as a kid of him saving people by the power of Ram's name. It's beautiful. Wow. And he was very athletic also. And later on, as an early adult, a young adult, he became a police officer under the British rule, because at that time, India was colonized by the British. And he was always a spiritual person from a very young age. But during that time, he encountered Gaudiya Vaishnavas who worship Radha Krishna Mahaprabhu. And they were disciples of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And he was so moved by them and spoke for hours with them at length. And he saw that they had the answers to everything. And that their mood was so deep. So he began going deeper into his bhajan, his chanting, and was chanting a lakh a day. I think Srila Gurudev even said he chanted a lakh a day from very young on. So he was already chanting a lakh. But now he was very absorbed in becoming one-pointed in his spiritual activities, and he wasn't interested in his job anymore and his family affairs. He was married also at that time and had some daughters. So one day he was chanting so much, his lakh, that he forgot his shift at the police station. And he realized this afterwards, and he said, okay, maybe I will be fired. But
this is it.
This is it. This is a sign I just need to, I'm not interested in this life. But then another officer said, Tiwaripura, because that's his last name, you did so well last night, and we're going to give you a promotion. And then Gurudev actually felt quite saddened about this. He realized that Krishna himself had come and replaced him and done his work for him because he was chanting Krishna's names. And he realized, if this is the power of Krishna's names, I will not waste it on these things. I will give my entire life to Krishna. So with that, he left shortly after on a train without telling anyone and landed in Bengal, Navadvip, in Devananda Gaudiya Math, where he took shelter of his Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Prajnana Keshavji Gaudiya Math, who is one of the senior disciples of Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And so he took shelter of him and traveled with him, became a very dear associate, a secretary, and they would travel to Ayodhya, up north to Kedarnath, and take people and go on pilgrimage. And Srila Gurudev was there with him very intimately. And after some time, Gurudev was sent to Mathura, the north of India, because he was a Hindi speaker. And Param Gurudev, Srila Keshavji Maharaj, instructed him to translate all of our Gaudiya Vaishnava literature into Hindi. Because most of our literature is in Sanskrit or Bengali. Because many of our acharyas are Bengali.
And then he did like Bhaktivedanta Thakur.
Right, he focused on Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, like Madhurya Kadambini, and Rupa Goswami's works, of course, and Bhaktivedanta Thakur's Jaiva Dharma. He translated many, many books and also wrote commentaries on that as well. So he was doing that and living in Mathura which is near Vrindavan, of course, and doing parikrama all the time, knowing the Brijbasis like family. When I've spoken to the Brijbasis in Braj, and I speak about Srila Gurudev, there is such a softness and happiness. They light up because they remember how much Gurudev would care about them, ask them how their family is, and just act not as some distant sadhu, but someone who really cared about them. And even one of my tailors is a Gurudev disciple, and he has Gurudev's picture. He's a simple tailor, you know, just doing his work, but Gurudev impacted them so much. And even Gurudev preserved a lot of the dilapidated sites of Vrindavan.
इसका पानी इतना ना सुंदर स्वच्छ था और इसमें सिंघाड़ा इसमें पानी फल एकदम इतना सुंदर.
Yeah, so Gurudev did bhajan for 50 years in Braj, non-stop. And many of the disciples of Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada would come for Kartik, and he would host them, and they would do parikrama pilgrimages together. So he had a lot of association with Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada's disciples.
Wow.
And he especially had a very deep connection with our Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He met Prabhupada in around 1947, I believe.
Wow.
And it was in Calcutta, if I'm not mistaken. And Param Gurudev was giving a talk, and there was an assembly, and he was up on a stage. And
Bhakti Pragyan Kesha.
Yes, Bhakti Pragyan Kesha Goswami Maharaj. And Gurudev was there also, watching and being the secretary. And then this householder came from out of the crowd. He came a little late, I believe. And Param Gurudev stopped his talk and said, Abhay Babu, come sit next to me. And this was the first time Gurudev met Srila Prabhupada. He said, who is this personality? Everyone in the Gaudiya Math who was prominent was generally a sannyasi. In saffron cloth, a renounced preacher.
Yeah, so he's very curious. Who is
Right, but Param Gurudev stopped everything and brought him right next to him.
Wow.
And after the talk, Param Gurudev told our Gurudev, he is very dear to me. He is a very special disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And he's been given the task to go to the West and preach this mission.
Yeah.
And you should respect him just like you respect me. So from the get-go, Gurudev respected Srila Prabhupada like a Shiksha Guru. And he says this many times. When he came to the West, he would say this. He is like my Shiksha Guru and Priya Bandhu. Priya Bandhu means dearmost friend. So they had that relationship, and Srila Prabhupada did not treat him as a junior, actually. They were really like equals. Even though Srila Gurudev wanted to treat him like a senior, Srila Prabhupada didn't allow for that so much. He says, I want to be your friend. Which is really sweet. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada at that time was a householder, but his family business was starting to fail. And his family life was falling apart. And he understood that this is his Guru Maharaj asking him, it's time to now fulfill that desire of his to go to the West. So he was starting to prepare, and he made his way to Vrindavan. He became, as you will, like a vanaprasth, leaving his family. And he spent time at Radha Damodar, which is where Rupa Goswami's samadhi is. And Rupa Goswami is our main person in our lineage who is essentially the disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he would go there, and he started translating his books in English and getting ready to go to the West and praying to Rupa Goswami. Now Gurudev was always going on parikrama. So he found out, Swamiji, well, he wasn't Swamiji yet, Abhay Babu is in Radha Damodar. And he said, why don't you come with us? Come with us and stay in Keshavji Gaudiya Math, Mathura, and we'll take care of you, facilitate. But Srila Prabhupada really liked staying at Radha Damodar. And at that time, Gurudev would visit him regularly. And Srila Prabhupada would roll chapatis, and Gurudev would cook them. And they would sit together and eat prasadam. And Srila Prabhupada, we've seen this many times in his recordings, he would play mridanga. So Prabhupada would play mridanga, and Srila Gurudev would sing. He was such an amazing...
Loved to sing.
And he was such a good kirtaniya. Gurudev's, if you haven't heard his recordings, such an amazing kirtaniya. And they would sing together, but most of the time Prabhupada could not sing because he was choked up and crying as he was playing mridanga. So they would exchange and speak so many deep topics together. And eventually Prabhupada was invited to Mathura Math for some time, and he stayed there. He would give lectures in English to prepare himself for the West. No one understood. But he was being supported by the Math to fulfill this desire of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. Yeah. And at that time, Srila Gurudev encouraged him, why don't you take sannyas? Right. This is the time. You've left your family, you're here, you're going to
the West.
You should take sannyas.
Right.
And Srila Prabhupada was very hesitant to take sannyas. He speaks about it himself. So, but by the encouragement of Gurudev, actually, Gurudev went to Param Gurudev, Srila Keshavji Maharaj, and said, give him sannyas. Give him sannyas. And actually, Prabhupada had asked for sannyas previously from Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, because they were very close. Prabhupada himself says that Srila Sridhar Maharaj is like his Shiksha Guru. Wow. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj stayed at Prabhupada's house many times for months, and they would discuss these things of how to speak to the Western audience and how to translate these things to the West about Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Yeah. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj refused. He said, I cannot give you sannyas. I know your family too well. If I give you sannyas, your wife will be very upset.
Yeah, he didn't want to be.
He didn't want to get. He was so respectful and sensitive to that. So he said, I cannot give you sannyas. And so, fast forwarding, Gurudev is encouraging Param Gurudev, Keshavji Maharaj, you give him sannyas. And then Srila Prabhupada finally said, okay, I will take sannyas, but only if this Sanatan Prabhu takes sannyas. And Sanatan Prabhu was this old householder who was maybe 80 or 90 years old, okay? But he was such a great devotee. And Sanatan Prabhu said, okay. So then Srila Prabhupada had to take sannyas, or willingly took sannyas, which is only in a few days from now on Vishwarup Mahotsav. On the full moon, he took sannyas. And there's that famous picture, you've seen it in many ISKCON temples. Yeah. Param Gurudev, Keshavji Maharaj is sitting on a chair, Prabhupada is standing with his danda, and Muni Maharaj, Sanatan Prabhu, took sannyas, became Muni Maharaj.
I wondered for years who that was.
Right, a lot of people don't know who he is. Sanatan Prabhu, Muni Maharaj. We actually, because of him, Srila Prabhupada
took sannyas.
So we got to thank him. And of course, Srila Prabhupada became Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. And then Prabhupada became a nickname later, a title.
Right.
But if you notice, our Gurudev's name, Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj, and Prabhupada's name, Bhaktivedanta Swami. Because Srila Keshavji Maharaj gave all his sannyas disciples Bhaktivedanta. So our Gurudev and Prabhupada are from the same family. It's not even a coincidence. It's divinely arranged that they took sannyas under Param Gurudev and had the same name because they're in a heart way and spiritually connected. And we'll talk about that more. Like their mission is very connected. Right. There was a reason he didn't take from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, even though he's so important in our line. So, but Keshavji Maharaj giving the sannyas is very important. And Gurudev speaks about this, that anything in spiritual life is not a formality. So who you take initiation from, who you take sannyas from, none of it is a formality. There is a very deep significance in any of these rituals, if you will. So anyhow, shortly after that, Srila Prabhupada goes preaching in India. And he goes to Jhansi, which is near Agra. And the preaching doesn't last too long. There's some problems with the property. But he has a beautiful Mahaprabhu Didi. And he brings it back to Mathura, and it's still there to this day. Wow. And he says, okay, now I'm going to go to the West. The preaching in India, okay, it's not going to work. I need to preach to the Westerners. They will make the Indians devotees again. So he goes to the West, and we know this story, so I won't get into the amazing details and miracle of him going to the West. Right. But when he was in correspondence with Gurudev a lot. They wrote hundreds of letters together. Yeah. Hundreds. And Prabhupada asked Srila Gurudev to send the first mridanga. And the first deities, there's small Radha Krishna deities that was in 26 2nd Avenue, Matchless Gifts. Those were sent by Gurudev. And Prabhupada also asked, can you send me peda, which is a milk sweet from Mathura that's famous. So Gurudev and Prabhupada, Gurudev was doing his best to support Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada actually asked him, will you come with me to the West? And Gurudev says, I cannot at this time. There is not much management or anyone there to take care of this temple or my Guru Maharaj's mission, but I will do whatever I can to support you. And he did, sending all these things and sending old transcriptions of old literature that Prabhupada needed to translate the Bhagavatam and things like that.
Wow.
He did so much seva.
Yeah.
And later on, Srila Prabhupada came back to India with his first disciples.
Yeah.
And Srila Gurudev greeted them openly. And there was also a lot of the disciples of Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada and just Indians in general were very hesitant about seeing these Westerners. They're malechas, they're yavanas, they're outcasts, they're not even in the caste. First of all, there was a lot of flack for Bhaktisiddhanta initiating Shudras, giving them Brahmin thread. Now to have yavanas have a Brahmin thread and worship on the altar, what to speak of women? There was so much flack that Prabhupada got for having them on the altar in the temple. So there was some hesitancy to eat the prasadam cooked by Kirtananda Swami and those that were with Prabhupada. But Gurudev willingly took the prasad immediately.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. And also, Srila Prabhupada started building Krishna Balaram over the years. And he would send a taxi to pick up Srila Gurudev from Mathura, bring him to Vrindavan. They would discuss many things. And we have Vaishnavas who are still present today who were in that car sent with Gurudev and witnessed some of these talks. Some of them extremely mystical. Extremely mystical. Yes, and very special. So if you want to know about it, you can meet us in person or connect with us. We can speak about that. Very mystical experiences. And then towards the end of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, it was becoming very clear that he would no longer return to the West and he was going to enter Nitya Lila. And this was in Vrindavan. And he called for Srila Gurudev. And he said, "Can you put me into samadhi?" Now again, any ritual like this is not a light matter. It's not a formality. To ask someone to put you in samadhi is a very, very deep thing. Because the samadhi is the apex of one's life. To be in that deep absorption and leave the body or exit this world in that way is a very special, a miraculous thing. And Gurudev was seeing Prabhupada in ecstatic symptoms as he was leaving. We remember hearing this from Prabhupada disciples. And so Srila Gurudev arranged the whole samadhi ceremony, which is, bearing Srila Prabhupada's body. But before that, they all took Prabhupada around all the main temples of Vrindavan. And Gurudev was one of the ones singing so much. There's beautiful recordings. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. And that was all happening. And of course, all the senior devotees of Srila Prabhupada, senior disciples, were also helping. But Gurudev was the one heading it up. And there's a beautiful quote, the last words, pretty much, that Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada exchanged. And this is about, Gurudev is saying about the mission that Prabhupada started. It has been done very beautifully. This is the proper way. It's good that you have raised this point, that everyone should protect the mission of Mahaprabhu, and that you have established in the Western countries by good cooperation. Though you have taught them, still, in the future, if everyone helps them, a wonderful movement can be established on the earth. Now, Srila Prabhupada says some things that are inaudible, and Gurudev mentions this in Bengali. Srila Prabhupada says, "I've collected many monkeys, and they still need training." And so it continues, "I have brought these malechas and yavanas, accepting those who were sent to me, and considering their qualifications and disqualifications. I tried educating them, just to get things going. They learn to their capacity. Things can be done in good cooperation. There is enough land, big, big temples, and no shortage of money." And then there's an inaudible section. Excuse me. Gurudev says, "It's proper for everyone to help in this matter. Everything will be still better if they are also humble and try to cooperate with everyone, with each other as well as with other Vaishnavas. I will do my best to help. Whenever and whatever they will ask, I will try my best to help them. Whenever they will call me, any advice they will want, wherever they may want me to go, although my qualification is limited, I will try to help to the best of my ability." So this is...
I want to cry.
Gurudev is vowing, I will do
It's a vow.
Whatever to support you. This is Srila Prabhupada's last request to him.
Yeah.
And so taking that on his heart, Srila Gurudev did his best to support, and Prabhupada himself said to his disciples, I've heard this from Srila Prabhupada disciples, if you need any help with Siddhanta or philosophical matters, go to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj.
Right.
And if you need advice and support on Vaishnav etiquette, go to Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj.
Wow.
And many disciples, well, not many, some started going to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. But there started to be some controversy about that, and some offenses were honestly made to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj did not... Well, yes, in terms of how the management of ISKCON were speaking about him, or keeping people away from Srila Sridhar Maharaj.
Was he going to the West at that time?
He did not go to the West. Srila
Yeah,
Sridhar
he
Maharaj
didn't go,
never
right?
go.
That's what I thought.
He stayed
Yeah.
in Navadvip, and people came to ask questions, and there's amazing recordings of his
Yeah, all the
question and
videos
answers.
are in
They're
India.
available,
They're
and his
not-
books,
Yeah.
which are recommended. Anyone should read them for our spiritual nourishment. They're
Yeah, totally.
amazing.
And his videos.
But slowly, other disciples started going, ISKCON, meaning Srila Prabhupada disciples, started going to Srila Gurudev in Mathura. And especially the GBC, which is the governing body commission, the management of ISKCON that Prabhupada had tried to institute. And many of them were gurus at this time now. You can imagine. Prabhupada has left. They're gurus. They're starting to initiate. And they want to uphold Prabhupada's mission.
Of course.
But like Srila Prabhupada said, they needed further education. You know, they had only been devotees for maybe 12 years at the most. You know, not to say that they are amazing. Big respect to all of them. And they are very exalted Vaishnavas, many of them that I've met. And so that's not to say. But it was Prabhupada's plan for them to get more education.
Right.
And so many of them went. And there are recordings with the GBC in the 1990s of Srila Gurudev speaking with them. And they specifically wanted to know the more rasik, esoteric, intimate pastimes and philosophy of our Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage, which speaks about the gopis and Radha and Krishna and the Rasa Leela, which is considered the highest pinnacle of our philosophy.
Right.
So they understood that we want to know more about this. And Srila Gurudev himself said, this is not something I would speak so openly.
Yeah.
But I'm going to speak it to you because you have asked, and this is my duty, because
Right.
Prabhupada asked.
Right.
And also, there was a worry that many of them may go to the Babajis of Radha Kund or try to find these answers somewhere else. So Gurudev says, it's my responsibility to give you these things.
Right.
And so he spoke on Vilap Kusmanjali, very intimate, sweet pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and explained the intricacies. And he spoke, whenever he spoke Radha Krishna pastimes, very chastely, very sweetly, very appropriately. Never something, I think some people have that impression that, oh no, Ras Leela. But when Gurudev spoke Ras Leela or any of these things, it was very grave, very polite, very chaste, very appropriate into what people could maybe digest. And even, anyway, so these recordings are there. And I thank the GBC for these recordings because he would not share this with just anybody. It's because they asked, he shared. And so some of the disciples were hearing from Srila Gurudev, and others of the GBC were not. There was a little bit of a tension, especially some of these conversations were in private quarters with closed doors. The GBC wanted it to be exclusive, and like, let's just have it with us.
Yeah, because it's high things. We don't.
Yeah, and
wanna
they
keep
wanted
it
to be able to
protected.
ask Gurudev, and
Yeah.
Gurudev would take them on parikrama and take them to all the holy
wow.
places. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't
I've
know.
heard this from them, and
Yeah.
they would be in places they've never been before in
Right,
Braj, and like
right.
he really spent time with them. And then it started becoming a thing with the senior devotees of Prabhupada saying, well, maybe you know too much. I don't know exactly what it was. Perhaps
some can listen,
there was,
some can't.
Yeah, there
Or
started
not,
to
you're not allowed. We're allowed.
or maybe just, we want to learn, we maybe want to hear from you, but I guess you guys have dibs on Gurudev. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think there was some tension, and I don't want to get into the politics too much of it, but essentially it got to such a head where the GBC had decided to make an ultimatum. There were many meetings saying, we need to stop you from going to Gurudev. He is not part of Prabhupada's mission. We need to make an ultimatum, and eventually they did. And the ultimatum was that you cannot be part of the ISKCON institution if you continue to hear from Gurudev and go see him. So this was a very difficult decision because a lot of those GBC loved Gurudev. They loved him so much.
Yeah.
But if they would have left the
I can't imagine.
Yeah, if they would have left the institution, they were worried perhaps they were gurus.
Yeah.
Would the institution fall apart? Would it create a huge wave? Because actually at that time, nobody knew about this. It was just the GBC. It wasn't the general ISKCON society. This was all happening late 80s, early 90s, like that time. Maybe early 90s mostly.
Okay.
So some of the lady disciples of Prabhupada easily left to Gurudev, and they said, we don't care for the institution. We need our bhakti. We want to be with Gurudev. But some of the men, a lot of them stayed in ISKCON. And I've heard directly that they went to Gurudev and apologized. So we are so sorry this is happening. We don't know what to do. And you're like,
what do you do?
What do you do? And Gurudev used to be invited every Baladev Purnima and certain festivals to Krishna Balaram to speak.
Oh.
And so they stopped inviting him. And that was a clear sign. They didn't even tell him. He was they didn't want him around. But they just stopped inviting him. And this made him actually really sad. And then some of the GBC who had relationship with him said, we are so sorry. We don't know what to do with this situation. And Gurudev
just kind of spiraled.
It spiraled. And then Gurudev said, whatever you have to do to keep Prabhupada's mission together, it's okay. Right? I know, it's... It's intense.
Yeah. Anyway.
Later on, this official ban happened where I guess, again, the details get me fuzzy with like the edicts and what was passed and all that. Yeah. But a ban happened that anyone who official ban, anyone who goes to Gurudev will be basically excommunicated or banned from ISKCON.
Right.
And not allowed in the institution. So when Gurudev heard this, it actually awoken a fire in him. And he said, you've awoken a lion. Because he said, Prabhupada asked me to do this. And if I don't speak and share these things and encourage those who need help that are his disciples, I am not fulfilling his request.
Yeah.
So
his instruction.
That engendered him to go to the West. He didn't have any desire. He didn't have any desire to go to the West. He was doing bhajan and braj. He was very happy. And he just wanted to help the leadership who were gurus in ISKCON to learn more, to know these things, so that they can delineate it to the whole of ISKCON. But when they banned and stopped it, he said, I must go to the West. Now I will go and preach this.
Because there's still Prabhupada disciples that want his help.
Yes.
And everything. So he's like, I gotta go now.
And even Prabhupada disciples who stayed with him were being banned from ISKCON, and he wanted to give shelter to them. And it started being that even younger devotees who weren't Prabhupada disciples were seeking his shelter, but because they were around him, they were also being banned from ISKCON. So he said, I have to give them shelter. They want to hear from me. So then initiation started happening. But it was never his desire to give initiations. Even in his own institution of Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, that was his Guru Maharaj's institution, he wasn't the initiating guru. Srila Vaman Maharaj was. So he never was interested in initiation. Yeah. He was the supporting role most of his life. Yeah, so... 1996, he comes to the West, and it's an incredible tour, and it becomes a snowball effect. Every year, more people keep coming, and many Prabhupada disciples come, and younger devotees start coming, and the propaganda starts to get very heightened. This is when everyone starts to know about Srila Narayana Maharaj in ISKCON. Before, not very few people knew.
Yeah, because he wasn't even in the West.
Yeah, he was in Braj.
Yeah.
So only those people who would go there a lot would know.
Right.
So that's when there started being very strong attempts to stop his festivals or to deter devotees from going and to spread articles about, he is not speaking what Prabhupada is speaking. He's, stealing disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So there started to be a lot of heat. Yeah. And Srila Gurudev, amazingly, always said, they're like my children. I don't take offense. Right. When a child pees or poops on your lap, do you take offense? So this is how I see them. So he never took offense, but it did affect a lot of devotees. Yeah. A lot of them had to leave. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But Gurudev's preaching was very bold. He wasn't interested in temples because Prabhupada had already built the temples.
Yeah, he said, Swamiji is already done. I don't need to make
He said, I want you to build a temple in your heart. So he was very internal mission based, developing the heart, going deeper. You distributed many books, but have you distributed that book to your heart, to yourself? Wow. That was his main mission, and mostly, because we're the younger generation, but mostly he was helping Prabhupada disciples.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see a lot of the Prabhupada disciples who maybe got burnt out, maybe got discouraged, or just like didn't have the taste anymore. He found them and like pulled them aside.
And also from other sanghas too.
And
that were got
Srila Sridhar Maharaj disciples, Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj disciples. He really became someone to support everyone. Gurukulis especially, a lot of them. Gurukulis were very disenfranchised. They did not want a guru. They did not want to take shelter of anyone. But by his love and affection, they actually wanted to come back to Krishna consciousness.
Right.
A lot of them took initiation. Yeah, exactly. So he really was an encouraging person, and especially to the Prabhupada disciples. He would make them sit right next to him.
Right.
He wanted a familiar relationship. He didn't want, and he answered their questions and doubts and gave sannyas to many of them. He's like, you can preach. Like they were just kind of householders, just kind of down and out, kind of doing their thing quietly, and he'd pull them out of the woodwork. Give them like encouragement, sannyas, shamarani didi. You know, all the women too. A lot of the women at that time in ISKCON, because the 80s had a lot of turmoil in the institution. Women were treated pretty badly. And Gurudev spent a lot of time trying to heal that. And speak about, because some of the things Prabhupada said in his books, people really misinterpreted and used it against women. Women are less intelligent, women are this, women are that, they should be in the back, cover your head, be quiet. And Gurudev, one disciple of Srila Prabhupada told me this story herself, that, you know, they were in the back and they were taught, you know, be quiet, be humble, chaste, cover your head, be in the back. And when Gurudev saw this, he said, oh, you were in the back? Come, not like this. Men here, women here, in half.
Side by side.
Side by side. And he had many women stand up and speak, not just the men. And he had, as we know, his daughter disciples and ladies sing and lead the kirtan more than the men many times. So he was so encouraging.
That was the vibe.
That was the vibe. It was a family vibe. It was encouraging. It was beautiful. And meanwhile, he was translating tons of books. And Shamarani Didi and many of the book team was translating it into English. So that was what was happening. And he was also bringing many people on parikrama. His main mission, come to Braj. Come to Braj. I'm not going to build a lot of temples. Come to Vrindavan. Get these impressions of Braja Bhakti. That was his thing. And around 2010, we know, there started to be signs that he was no longer going to come back to the West. And he actually said it himself. He said, this is my last tour. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, I couldn't even wrap my brain around it. What does that even mean? I felt like it just got started on that train of following him around the world. And in Kartik, everyone knew he was going to leave that time, because he had said, I will leave on the same day as my godbrothers.
Oh my God, he said that?
He said that many times.
I thought it just happened.
No. Srila Vaman Maharaj and Srila Trivikram Maharaj. Srila Vaman Maharaj, sorry,
Yeah.
One of them left first. Was it Trivikram Maharaj?
Trivikram Maharaj left first, I think.
So Trivikram Maharaj left.
I think.
In Kartik.
Yeah.
Then a few years later, Srila Vaman Maharaj left on the same day, Titi, the same moon calendar day in Kartik. And Gurudev said, I will also leave on that day. Because they were very close godbrothers. He said he would. And all the devotees were crying and praying, and some of our god sisters were singing at the door all night, making sure, please don't go, please don't go. And the constellation in the sky was perfect for leaving the body, like liberation, spiritual world.
Like, he's going.
The portal was open. Gurudev was ready, and he didn't leave that day.
He didn't.
And Gurudev said, I wanted to leave that day. But the pulling of the crying and the praying of my disciples, I could not leave at that time.
I remember that,
And he gave his last public speech. He said, I will see you all in Navadvip. So in my mind, I thought, oh, he will be there for Navadvip Parikrama, Gaur Purnima. Little did we know, now Gurudev is very tricky. Little did we know that he would leave December 29th, 2010, in Jagannath Puri, in Brahma Muhurta, in lotus position, as if he's doing his Gayatri mantras. He left in that position on the day of Srila Vaman Maharaj's appearance day. And the appearance day and disappearance day of Vaishnavas are considered the same. There is no difference. Right. So he fulfilled his desire. He also fulfilled the disciples' desire to not leave in Kartik, but he still left on his godbrother's day in Jagannath Puri. And for us, sadly, I didn't attend the Samadhi ceremony. I know you did. But we all saw him in Navadvip. He continues to influence us.
You know, I also just want to add one thing about how he made everyone feel so special.
Oh, yeah.
And sure, this particular Prabhupada disciple said not to mention his name. I won't mention his name, but one interaction, he had many interactions with Srila Gurudev, but he really emphasized and shared with me how Srila Gurudev made him feel. And a lot of Srila Prabhupada disciples would say how, like, he made them feel how, like, the same way that Srila Prabhupada made them feel, like, accepted and loved and taken care of and supported. And one interaction he had with him was, you know, one time that he was going to, like, one of the programs with Srila Gurudev, it was, like, before it started and everything like that, he's coming there. Srila Gurudev, like, hugged him, right? Yeah. And he was like, Srila Gurudev, I'm not, like, you know, ready, whatever. And then he just pulled him closer. He was just like, and he was like, you know, Swamiji and I were close like this, you know. I want that you and I should be close like this, you know. And just so many interactions like that where he just felt like Gurudev was just like his heart, you know, heartstrings. And so like much. To this day, even when he recently gave Hari Katha, you know, he gave Hari Katha, and just even mentioning how much mercy, he was like, Gurudev gave us so much mercy. He was just like on the verge of getting choked up. And it's like anytime they're remembering like how much he encouraged them and how much them and loved them, it's just so much for them. And it's like,
there's so many stories of Prabhupada disciples, and one of them that I've heard, which is so sweet, is one Srila Prabhupada disciple. He was in New Vrindavan with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would have them sit out and kind of have a debate or question answer kind of thing every morning at that time. And this Prabhupada disciple was really bold and it's like, I'm going to like show what I know and like let's have fun with the debate. But then Srila Prabhupada really smashed him. Chastised
you don't
him.
know anything.
You don't know anything. Basically, I think that's what he actually said. You don't know anything. Foolish person. You know how Prabhupada is. And a lot of his godbrothers, this Prabhupada disciple's godbrothers, started using that a little bit against him, saying, oh, you actually don't know anything. You don't know Prabhupada. He chastised you. You didn't know his mood. So this became a heavy weight on him, especially after Srila Prabhupada left. Aww. He couldn't reconcile this. You can imagine like how devastating. It's like,
he's like God. Traumatized.
He's literally traumatized. And when he first met Gurudev, he was introduced to Gurudev. Oh, this is so-and-so, and he did this preaching, and he did that, and he built this. And then this devotee said, no, Srila Prabhupada, he wasn't happy with me. He chastised me, and all of this. And Gurudev lit up, and he said, no, he chastised you because he loved you so much. And that disciple just starts, that's it. The waterworks. And decades of hurt and pain was healed in that instant. And then he went on to take sannyas and like preaching all over the world. Aww. So this is just a small example.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, mid-80s, and my parents were going to the Radha Govinda temple in Brooklyn.
Nice.
And at that time. And then things got a little crazy for my mom. She wasn't feeling it. My parents separated, and she took me, moved to Northern Virginia, and basically started a whole new life. And she was like, just kind of wanted to forget about the Hare Krishnas. And
how old were you?
I was like 4 or 5. She joined the Air Force, remarried.
Wow.
And yeah, basically we kind of started a whole new life. I have a really great childhood with my family. I have a really close-knit family. Stepdad, my mom, everything was great. Fast forward to I was 14, about 13 or 14, I really got started getting interested in God. Actually, I declared myself an atheist at 13 because I was just like, if God was God, he wouldn't let all these bad things happen in the world, so I'm not going to believe in him, you know, like, that's that, you know. I was also, like, very open, very into, like, you know, crystals and chakras and energy metaphysical things, right. I was, like, very much into metaphysics as a whole. Dream states, fasting, all that kind of stuff. They started talking about philosophy in junior high, like when I was like 13 or 14. And that's when I discovered, like, oh wow, there's like all kinds of religions. And actually maybe I am kind of into God. And maybe it's okay. And like, you know, Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Sufi, you know, Christianity, Muslim, like I really wanted
It was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Like I wanted to know more. And I was exploring. I was a freshman in high school, and I was in my math class, and our teacher would like switch the seats periodically, so no two people would get too familiar and start you know, talking too much during class, things like that. And so one day I was paired with this girl. Interestingly enough, she was 18 and I was almost 15. She was like, yeah, I got this kind of amnesia where like her brain like forgot math.
How did she get amnesia?
Because oh yeah, she was like in some kickball like game, and the ball hit her head so hard.
Oh my god.
That like she got this some like special type of amnesia where like she didn't forget everything, but she forgot certain parts of her brain, forgot certain things.
Okay.
And it caused her to have to be like demoted 2 years in math.
Wow.
And so I happened to be really good at math, and I had skipped 1 grade ahead in math. So we ended up in the same math class. And now we're paired together side by side, you know, sitting. And one day in class, like, so we're cool, you know. And one day, like, she has this, like, this, like, plaid cloth bag thing around her hand, and I'm looking and I'm like, and she's like this, and it's like moving around, and she's like mumbling to herself. I'm like, yo, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, and like she was kind of thrown off. She's like, oh, like I'm right beside you. She's like, I'm meditating. And I was like, oh. I was like, really? And she's like, oh, well, you know, I'm chanting on my beads. And I was like, really? Like, because I was so intrigued by anything like having to do with like, you know, meditation or religion or whatever. So I was like, whoa, really? I was like, wow. And we're like, okay, well, you know, we'll talk about it later. You know what I mean? We're like in the middle, you know, like class, the teacher's talking. And she's like, yeah, we'll talk about it. I was like, okay. And then like, she's telling me like about meditation. I was like, yeah, I've heard about that. And, you know, we're kind of talking. And next thing you know, like, I don't know if it was like a week later or something, you know, we're like taking lunch together. We're like becoming friends, you know. And then, would you want to come to the temple like on Sunday? And I was like, would I? You know, I was so happy that she like invited me to like her place of worship. Like, I was like, yeah, oh my God. I was like, that'd be so cool, you know? And so we went, and I think it was like either on or around my 15th birthday. Like, I just turned 15 when I went to the temple. And I was like, this is cool. Like, it was like my birthday present, you know, to go to this place. And so we went to Potomac Temple because I was in Northern Virginia. It was like close to Maryland, that area. And we went to the temple. I went to the first time. It was like so amazing. I was like, I didn't know there were deities. I was like, the statues are so pretty, you know, like I didn't know what they were. But it was like, I was like, they're so beautiful and smiley and they're so bling bling garments and like flowers and incense, the smells and everything. And then the kirtan, I was like, whoa, you know, and I was a musician. I played violin and sang and did all this stuff. So I was like, wow, this is so cool. I love the music, you know, and there was prashadam and I was like, the food, oh my God, this is so great. And I was just like blown away. I was like, this is how you pray to God, you know, like whatever this is, I'm in, like I'm down, you know. So then I started going every Sunday and they gave me a book. The first book I read was Science and Self-Realization by Srila Prabhupada.
Great book to
I was
start
like, this
with.
is dope.
Yeah.
This is cool. I'm down. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. So I'm serving at the temple. The guru thing, I was kind of like very hesitant about. I was like, what's up with that? You know, I was like, I don't know about bowing down to some human, you know, that's like has faults and all that kind of stuff or whatever. I just didn't understand that whole idea. But it became apparent that the guru thing was a thing. And that
it was important.
Yeah, it was important. And I was like, you know, that there's a disciplic succession. And I started learning about those things. And also, one Prabhu was teaching me how to like pronounce the diacritics and like learning how to pronounce Sanskrit and learning some things. So I was starting to kind of get an idea like this is serious. This is something serious. And so that girl and like my friends at the time were like, okay, yeah, you know, come and see, you know, Bhaktivedanta Swami. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. You know, and Radha Swami had came and spoken a couple times. I was like, okay, cool. But since we were there, I was there in that area. I think there was the zonal guru system at that time. So Bhaktivedanta Swami was like the guy and he was like the guru. And he was so awesome. He was just an awesome personality. And he was doing so much preaching. He was preaching not only to us, but at the colleges in the area. And he was so special to a lot of people, not just the devotees.
These discussions, and in my books, is that we're looking at life in a very holistic way.
Okay.
We're looking at man as a physical being who has a metaphysical aspect, a physical aspect, and actually is the soul or the spiritual.
Okay.
He wrote so many beautiful books, like
I never
Spiritual
met him.
Warrior.
I wish I met him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, he
I
was
didn't meet him.
such a beautiful personality and so sweet and so loving and caring and he was always so like ecstatic and he was happy and you know, at least that, you know, my experience was you know, I was like, yeah, he's definitely, looking back, I'm like, yeah, he was my Shiksha Guru. He was one of my Shiksha Gurus, for sure, without a doubt. And, you know, there was like the headquarters, there was like a special house that we'd go and it was programs and everything was cool, awesome, great. And then, now that I was 16, I had gotten my license. My stepdad had bought me a car and now I can drive to the temple.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I was like, I didn't need a ride, I could go. And one day I was about to run out the door to do save at the temple because it was Sunday and everything. And my mom says, wait. And then I turn around and she's just bawling, like crying. And I was like, oh my God, Mom, what's wrong? And she was like, here's something I have to show you. And I was like, okay. And so she's like, follow me. So I follow her upstairs. We pull down the little ladder thing that leads to the attic. We crawl up into the attic, and my mom takes this big black trash bag, and she opens it up, and she takes out like this sari and like pieces of sari, and she was just like,
wow.
And I was like, is that like, you know, I was like, oh my God, it's a sari, you know, and she takes it out. And then there was pieces, and she was like, oh, you know, because my grandmother was a seamstress. And so some of the pieces were cut because she was using some of the pieces to make things, like make skirt or something out of the fabric, out of the sari fabric. Because she didn't know. She was like, okay, I'm just going to make. And my mom had these two light, like embroidered, these light pink bead bag, you know, that still had beads in it. Like,
wow.
She took it out. And then she takes out, as she's taking it out, she's kind of talking about like, you know, we were devotees and we went to Brooklyn and this happened and whatever. And like, she's telling the story, but it's kind of fuzzy in my mind because I just remember when she had taken out the picture of Srila Prabhupada.
Wow.
It was like everything else she was saying, it was kind of like, wah, 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 because I had zoned in. And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, that's the statue in the back of the temple, you know? I didn't know the proper word, like Morti and like whatever. I was just like...
Oh, it's Srila Prabhupada.
I was just like, it's Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, that's why I was just like, that's the same guy they have in the back. I was like, whoa. And it was like the old school framing, like the, you know, it's just like the piece of wood that's like carved on the sides, like as a frame, and it's like has the lamination border and the picture of Srila Prabhupada in the middle. And I was just like, whoa. And it was just like Prabhupada sitting on like asana. It was like just so beautiful. And I was like staring at it. And my mom was talking, and then she kind of slowly stops and she's like, are you okay? Like, and I was like, can I have this picture? And she's like, yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. So we come down from the attic or whatever, and I just go into my room. I started staring at it, and I was just like, okay. Like, not only was like, the idea of Guru became more palpable for me in that moment. Like, I was like, okay, Guru, like, I was like, but I was obviously aware that, you know, Srila Prabhupada was like no longer physically with us, but I was like, if I get a Guru, I need a Guru like you, you know, like I was like, I want a Guru like you, like you. And also it was very palpable that like, I was a seeker. Me and the devotees I met, we were actually attending a lot of interfaiths, like in DC, and going, you know, studying more about different religions and just being educated on these things. But in that moment, I was like, I guess I'm a Hare Krishna. You know, 'cause
everything's out the window.
I guess. Well, you know, I was cool with all those things and knowing, but I was just like,
it was your path.
Yeah, I was like,
this is it.
I was like, okay, it's official.
Okay, it's official.
I guess I'm a Hare Krishna. You know, that was like my logic.
Wow.
You know, staring at the picture, and I was like, you've been with me my whole life. You've been here this whole time. You're with me in my attic, and you're also there at the temple. I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, I'm a Hare Krishna. And then, so then I left. I was like, bye, Mom. I left. I was driving to the temple. I was like, I'm a Hare Krishna.
I have to say, this story is so wild, Tulsi. I've heard this a few times, but every time I'm just amazed.
Yeah.
This is not something that you make up. It's like a movie. And yeah, Srila Prabhupada was there your whole life and you didn't know it. It's like, oh my God.
So you can imagine, like, when I arrived there, I'm like, okay, pranam. You know, like,
pranam to
Prabhupada. And then, so after that, I guess my mom and, like, also my father back in Brooklyn became more, I guess, comfortable with, like, sharing. Like, okay, we knew these devotees because they knew they had, like, friends that were, like, intimate friends that were Prabhupada disciples. And one that, like, one that introduced me to, again, he's like, I know you are who you are. I used to change your diapers. Like, so I knew, like, there were Prabhupada disciples that, like, took care of me and watched me and knew me and babysat me. And, you know, it was like, I was like, wow, you know. And so anyway, that one particular Prabhupada disciple was actually taking shiksha from Srila Narayana Maharaj.
Okay.
And he was sharing, so he started to share with me. He was like sharing lectures and, you know, about his background. He was like, oh, read this because this is the background of, you know, he was like, yeah, this Maharaj, like, talking about Srila Narayana Maharaj, like, oh, he knew Srila Prabhupada like a decade or so, whatever, you know, or more, like before he came to the West, even to preach to the Westerns. So I was like, whoa, really? And I was like becoming very intrigued. I was like, who is this Vaishnava? You know, like that knew Srila Prabhupada before.
Way back.
Way back. I was like, what? And, you know, and so anyway, he was sharing me like lectures from Srila Narayana Maharaj and also from who's at the time, Aranya Maharaj at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the nectar, it was just so amazing. And one lecture that stuck with me was, you know, talking about the stages of Bhakti and, you know, quoting Rupa Goswami and all. I was like, whoa, stages. Like, I was hearing Harikatha and it was great. Everything was great. But I hadn't really heard Harikatha quite like that. Like, very, like, intricate. Like, just things I hadn't heard before.
Right.
You know, it was just, yeah. And I was becoming inspired and I wanted to share it with my friends, you know. So I shared, you know, with my girlfriend, my high school friend, and another Prabhu. And I was sharing them, like, in the temple. I was sharing, like, what I had heard. And I was like, wow, like, this is so cool. Like, oh, my God, and this or whatever. And they were right there with me. They were like, yeah, oh, my God, that's so amazing. And we're like, oh, my God, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, who is that? I was like, well, you know, this Vaishnav, like, he knew Prabhupada, like, before he came to the West. And he would, like, helped him and stuff. And, you know, whatever I could remember. Like, who is he? Who is he? Who is this? And I was like, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj. And then their faces just dropped. Like it was like depression and shock. It was like the look of the face that was given out there. And I was like, and they just looked at me like they like saw a ghost or something, or like I had 3 heads, you know, like, and they were just like, oh my God. And I was like, and then my friend she was like, you don't know? And I was like, no, what? He's stealing Prabhupada disciples. And I was like, at first I was like just kind of confused because I was like, but a Prabhupada disciple told me about him. Like I was totally like, I was just kind of like that, like what? You know, like totally like, how is that even possible? Like, you know, like how could anyone steal anyone? Like, you know, I was just totally confused. It's okay. Like, we'll help you, you know, like, okay, so there's these links. She's like, I'll send them to you. Don't worry. I'll send them to you and you can read them and, you know, you could see for yourself. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, because of my friends, I was like, all right, cool. Right. You know, I just remember like I was reading these things and I was like 3 articles, something like that. And I was reading and after the first one, I was like, whoa, that's messed up. And the second one, I was like, oh, and by the third one, I was just getting like kind of overwhelmed. It was like, mind you, I was a seeker. I had gone with other religion, whatever. I just never heard anyone talk about anybody like within their own religion in this way. I'm like, okay, first of all, just from a human standpoint, how could anyone say such terrible things about another human being?
Wow.
Just to start with, right? And then I was like, and secondly, speaking about somebody like that, and I'm like, something kind of clicked with me that I'm like, I don't think they have all the information for them to be saying this.
I see.
You know what I mean? Still, even if you don't have all the information, I was like, for anyone to make such terrible definitive remarks about anybody, and it's your same religion, like it's your same, you in the same group, I'm like, that's not even spiritual. Like, like that was my, you know, I was almost 17 at the time. I was just like, that's not cool. Like, for anyone to talk so badly about anybody, I was just like, I just started crying and I was like, I can't read anymore. Like, I was just like, okay, close link. Like, I was like, I can't do this. And so I was like, and then I realized, okay, I'm in a dilemma right now. My friends share this with me out of care and concern for me. And I appreciate that and I understand that. But I was like, this kind of sounds like slander. You know what I mean? Like, that was like, I was like, oof. Okay, how do I have this conversation? So I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to ask them some questions. So the next time I saw them, I don't know if it was like another Sunday or whatever, we're in the temple again. I see them. She was like, she's like, did you read it? I was like, yeah, I read it. I was like, but I have some questions. I was like, okay. I just want to know, okay, so do you know who wrote these things? She's like, no, not personally. I said, okay. Do you know any Prabhupada disciples that know Srila Narayana Maharaj? Like, I've met him or whatever. No, I haven't. Like, okay. Do you know any Prabhupada disciples that know Srila Narayana Maharaj? No. Okay. I guess it's safe to say that you don't know anybody that knows Srila Narayana Maharaj then? No. Have you listened to any of his lectures? No. Have you seen any of his writings or articles or, whatever? No. Do you know anything about him personally? No. I was like, okay. All right. Well, I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm done with the questions. Like, I'm good. I don't think she knows, like, about it at all. So I was like, okay. And then it kind of became, like, it started to become, like, kind of a gossipy point. Then that, like, oh, she's like, looking at Narayana Maharaj stuff, like, amongst my friends or whatever. They were telling me, they're like, okay, you know what? Like, you're kind of new, so you need to be making sure that you're chanting 16 rounds every day. You need to make sure this, make sure that, whatever, because you need to make sure you're, like, super, super, super solid before you take a guru. And I was just like, just in my own logic, I was like, but isn't the guru supposed to instruct you in your bhakti? Like, aren't they supposed to lead you? Like, how are they supposed to lead you, like, if you're supposed to do it yourself? Like, I couldn't reconcile that.
Right, like, how do I have to make myself so ready, but I
need
help?
How do I know how to make myself ready? Like, I don't know anything. Like, I am new.
I need a guru to show me?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that why I need instruction? Isn't that the point of taking a guru? Like, whatever. So I'm having these discussions. You're a smart teenager.
Hey. You're very smart.
I was just using my logic because I'm new. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, like, it was becoming apparent to me that, like, some of these people, like, they had grown up their whole life in this. Like, I was kind of, like, scoping that out. I'm like, okay, there's been people that have been in this way longer than me, maybe even born in it. I'm like, and that's cool. But at the same time, I was a seeker. And I was like, this is my path. Like, I was like, from what I understand, this is a personal process. Like, right. I was like, this is my choice. You know what I mean? This is my journey. Mm-hmm. And so for some reason, that was very strong within me. Like, I was like, I'm a seeker. I'm figuring this out as I go, like, and so anyway, the time went on. I was still going, to see, with my friends, still seeing Bhaktivedanta Swami, still going to the temple. Everything was cool. And then I found out through that, then it became like, because that one Prabhupada disciple told me that now Srila Narayana Maharaj is coming to Virginia. I lived in Northern Virginia. He's coming to Virginia.
Oh my God.
And I was like, woo, oh, snap. I was like, and I was getting, like, kind of excited, but also very, very nervous, because I was like, ooh, I don't know if my friends back at the temple are going to be cool with this. Mm-hmm. If they, you know what I mean? But, like, I kind of want to go, but, oh, man, I was, like, in a dilemma, and I was very, very distraught. Okay? I was like, oh, my God, what do I do? And at one point I was like, maybe I shouldn't go, because then it won't disturb my friends. And then I was just like, well, wait a second. I got to make this decision. This is very important. So, and I didn't know what to do. So then that Prabhupada disciple was like, look, read this book, Shri Guru and His Grace by Bhakti Rakshak Srila Goswami Maharaj.
Such a good book.
So I go to the temple, I look around, the book is there. I purchase it, I read it. The one part that stands out to me is where Maharaj describes, I don't know what it's called, I'm not a farmer, but he describes when a farmer has a master seed, And then in the absence of the master seed, he will use the copy seeds to grow his crop. But if the master seed is available, maybe like an heirloom seed or something like that, if it's available, you will use that master seed. So my logic was, I'm like, okay, if Srila Narayana Maharaj, if this particular Maharaj was sannyas even before Srila Prabhupada and had known Srila Prabhupada through that whole transition from householder, I was like, he's probably the senior Vaishnav than everybody that got initiated in the West. And not to discount, but he's probably senior to them. So that was my logic.
I see.
It wasn't like someone's better, you know what I mean? Like I was just like, I should at least go see him. So I was also feeling like, oh, he might be my guru, but I wasn't sure. I hadn't met him yet.
Right.
So I make the decision to go, and my friends are like, oh my, you know. But like at that point, I kind of didn't care because I was just like, look. Like I heard my logic was already made up, you know, in my mind. And I'm going to go. So those private disciples, a few, you know, that crew that was in D.C. helped me to, you know, made my arrangements so that I could go where I was going to stay, all kind of stuff, because we were going, the venue was a campgrounds.
Right.
And, you know, there was like bunk beds and things like that.
I remember before you said something, when we were talking about this before, didn't you get permission or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
No. That's good. You're reminding me. Oh yeah, before I went, I did see Bhaktivedanta Swami one last time. I had gone, and I said, you know, Maharaj, this and this and that, this and this and that, such and such and such. May I have your permission to see Srila Narayana Maharaj? And he said, of course you may go. He is Vaishnav. You may go, no problem. And so I wanted to give respect to who had cultivated me and taught me so much. And, you know, just ask if I could go. And he said, okay. And I was like, thank you. So I really appreciate Maharaj so much I had from him, and then also from the Prabhupada disciple, I never had any pressure. I was always given the freedom to make my choice. Even though my friends and everyone was like...
They gave the more peer pressure
Yeah,
stuff.
there was like, the more peer pressure stuff. But from them, I received no pressure. And I'm so grateful for that, because I know a lot of people did get lots of pressure from both ends. Yeah. So I was like, okay, thank you, Pranam. And then, yes, the arrangements were made. I said, okay, it's official, I'm going. And so I went. Fast forward, I'm there. We're in the room, meeting Srila Narayana Maharaj for the first time. Wow. So if you're a Reiki person or, you know, energy feeler or whatever, I'm telling you, it's first. And when I entered that room, of course, it was also nervousness, and there was that too. I was like, whoa, I'm gonna meet this whoa, you know. So I was excited, nervous, all these things. But when I entered the room where he was, I felt this heat in my body. I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa. So I felt that. So that was there. And I sat down. I was like, okay. And he was talking to some other individuals and a couple families and things. And it's funny because sometimes later on I found out people were thinking that he was just willy-nilly giving everyone initiation. And I'm telling you, from the first time I was in that room, I witnessed him turn individuals down.
Okay.
In a very loving and respectful way. He said, oh, you know, maybe next time or not this or whatever, you can take, you know, whatever, because they were preparing for, you know, people that wanted Harinam or Diksha first or second or whatever, what they would get and all these things. And yeah, some people were turned down, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't an issue because he was very, very calm and very loving about it. And I was like, wow, he's like so nice about it, you know, because I was like watching this, you know, before I was to like meet him, you know. And so then it was my time to like meet him. I was like, okay. So I go up to like in front of him, almost like kind of the distance we are, and he's like in a chair and I'm there on the floor and I'm like this, and all the Prabhus are, you know, giving the recommendations on, you know, for me. They're like, okay, you know, she's been chanting and she's been reading and she's been serving and she's been doing this and she does that. And I was just there and like looking at him, and he's like listening to them and, you know, nodding and all that kind of stuff. And he's looking at me and also mentioning that I was taking, you know, instructions from Bhakti Tirtha and going, you know, to DC and all these things. And he said, and then he says, oh, such wonderful devotees serving there, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he like glorified. He was like, oh, so nice, such nice devotees there, you know, inspiring. Like he's like glorifying like ISKCON and, you know, saying all these things. And he's like, oh, such nice. He's like, you can take from there, like it's cool, you're doing good there, you know, like everything's good, like you can take. And all I could think was of those articles that I read about him and what was said about him. And I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, like in my head, like so many things were running through. Like I was like, he's so humble, like he's so sweet. And I was just like, and then it came back like how I was feeling, like how they were saying such terrible things about him. And I was just like, he was like, okay, you can take ice. And then I was like crying. Like at that point, I was just like streams of tears. And I was like, no, I want you. Like, I'm like, I'm decided. Like, that's it. And he's like, oh, like, okay, all right, okay, you know, if you know, because I was very like, no, I want you. Like my head was down. I just remember like, no, like, no, wow. I don't want to hear it. Like, I want you. And he's like, okay. So then it was like, okay, we'll prepare the things. They were like, okay, you'll make one plate, you know, like fruit, you know, giving the instructions for how to do it, you know, don't eat, you know, the whole thing. Preparing for. And so it was decided. So I'm there and I'm just in that mode, right? I'm just like in that whatever. And they were saying some more things about me. And then one devotee in the back is like, and she plays violin, Gurudev. And then Gurudev, to my like complete surprise, he goes, what? And I'm also like, what? Like, of all the things, like, why are we talking about my violin right now? Like, it is the furthest thing from my mind. And so that Prabhu was like, yeah, she plays violin. If we leave now, we'll make it in time for evening class and the ceremony. I was just like...
If we leave now, what? Like to get...
Because it was the morning time. If we leave now to go get it, he meant.
To get the violin?
To get the violin.
Okay. And
come back. We'll make it in time for... I was just like...
Oh my God.
Oh, I was pissed.
That's a long...
I was pissed off. It was a 6-hour round trip. It was 3 hours back, 3 hours coming back. Oh my God. I was like teenager pissed. I didn't say one word to this Prabhu. We got in the car to get my violin. I was just like, I went through so much to get here, and now we have to leave. Like, I was like,
to get my violin.
Like, why, you know? Anyway, we got it. I was like, my mom's like, well, you're here back so soon? Like, you know,
I can't talk right now. I
gotta get my violin so we can make it back for my initiation. Oh God. So we get back there. Mm-hmm. It's evening class. We're ready. Got my violin. Okay, what do I do? What do I play? Like, I was like, okay, I guess I'll play this little piece. It's like nice. It's sweet. I'll play that. We're there. pavilion is filled with devotees from like all over the world. I mean, you remember that time? It was just like packed, like somewhere between 200 to 300 devotees.
What year was this?
2001.
Okay.
2001. June 2001. Washington Lake, Virginia. I'm there, right? All the devotees are there. All these people, mind you, I do not know. I only know who brought me. Like, that was just a few devotees out of this sea of devotees. So they're like, okay, now she's going to play. And I was just like, oh my God, you know? So I started playing for like a few minutes. And then I'm like I'm not quite in the front and I'm not quite all the way in the back. I'm like somewhere in the middle, like off to the side. And there's like some devotees that like turn around and they're motioning to me like, oh, wait, stop. And then I realized that I guess Srila Gurudev had instructed me to stop, but I didn't know because I was like all, like playing. I couldn't, yeah, I was like all in it. And then he was like, no, stop. So then I'm looking up at the stage where he is, where Srila Gurudev is. And then he kind of leans forward and he's like, because we're like kind of farish away. And then he's like, can you play like this? And he's like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Right, and then the sea of devotees erupts into Maha Mantra. And it's like, but it's very kind of slow. Like it's like the standard tune, but very slow. And I was like, okay, he wants me to play this. He wants me to play Maha Mantra. So I'm like there trying to find the notes. And it was the first time I had played without sheet music in my life, just by ear. Wow. And I was like trying to get the notes. I was just like focusing on, you know, whatever, and everyone's singing. And they went through like maybe 3 or 4 Maha Mantras before it stopped. But by the end, I got it. You know, I got it. I was like, yeah, I got it. Okay. I was like, okay, I can do this, you know? Yeah. And then it stopped. And then it stops. There's a slight silence. And then Srila Gurudev, he's like, I want that you should always sing and play like this. Wow. And I was like, wow. I was like... Because I was a musician. I was like in the band, the chorus, and the orchestra. You know, I was like in it. And he was like, you know, at the time I see, like he was utilizing my propensity for music. He was very encouraging. He's like, I want you to sing. And he did it just like that, like very dramatic. Sing and play. And I was like, all right, noted, you know. Like I was like, all right, cool, I could do that. And then also too, the other side note was that when that Prabhu had given me the book to read, he had also instructed me to pray to Nityananda Prabhu, like for a guru, Srila Prabhupada, of course, and to Tulsi Devi. And I was like super obsessed with Tulsi Devi. I had like 5 plants in my room, like the grow light, the mister, the debugger, like everything, right? You know, the little, you know, oils and repotting, everything. I was obsessed with Tulsi because I loved all the stories. There was like some like talk about like, oh, what's her name going to be? What's her name going to be? And my legal name was Tabitha, starting with a T. And I was just like, okay. I was like, I want Tulsi. You know, like, I was like, I don't know. No, I want to be Tulsi. And then after I had played or whatever, they had announced the initiate names. And then when I stood up, he's like, Tulsi Devi Dasi. Jai. I was like, that's my girl right there.
He knows my heart.
He knows. I'm like, okay, got it. He knows. He knew. So
I love this.
That was it. That was it for me. I was cooked, you know. And also, I want to acknowledge my dear friend to this day, Stai Bhavadasi. Thank you. You know I love you. She was the only one, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj disciple. She was the only one at that time that stayed my friend. Wow. And even came to my ceremony. She couldn't stay the whole time or whatever, but she came to my ceremony. Wow. And she came, you know, she was there for the thing and then she left, but she was like, oh, we can't stay, but, you know, but she came and supported me. So I will never forget that either. So thank you.
She was
love
your
you.
only friend.
She was the only one that stayed my friend after I went, because I was excommunicado from ISKCON at that point. I was like, everyone was like, turn away. I still went to the temple like a couple times, but I was just like, you don't really feel like going somewhere where you don't feel welcomed, or you don't feel like your friends like you anymore, and they don't want to talk to you, or like they made it very clear that they were not talking to me anymore. I was like, you are dead. You do not exist. You went to the other side. You've forgotten Srila Prabhupada. I'm like, Srila Prabhupada brought me to I mean, that's just how I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's cool. We can agree to disagree, but you know, Srila Prabhupada is just still there. Without him, I would not even be here to be, you know, so I was just like, I know what it is. And so, but anyway, and mind you, that was the height of the politics. I looked back and I was like, oh snap. I got initiated. You know, I got second initiation 2 days later. 2 years later in Badger.
In 2003.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I was 17 when I got Harinam, 19 when I got Diksha. So
nice.
Because they were like, oh, it takes some time, and I took that time, and I really tried to learn as much as I could, read more, and all kind of stuff. Throughout, I guess because Gurudev started the touring to in the West in 1996,
right? And
he did his tours all the way up until
2010.
And
many times around the world. So even in 1 year, he would go twice around the world. So I believe he traveled over 30 times around the world. That is a lot. And he was in his late 80s, you know, to early 90s. Traveling, it was incredible, and
don't know how he did it, but
it's amazing.
Hey. And he was doing books. Like I remember,
he did.
Sometimes they were like, "Oh, leave Gurudev alone. He's translating." I'm like, "Okay, he's traveling and translating and giving classes." And like, I was like, "Okay, not human," but But anyway, but like, also throughout those tours, I made it a point from that point on, right, that I was like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure I'm there. And there were like I missed a couple Badger festivals, like, because I didn't have enough money, but like I was maxing out credit cards.
You're making it happen.
I did everything I could
to
make sure I was there. Every time I was like, anytime he's in America, I'm gonna make sure I'm there, you know. And I did that to the best of my capacity. And and Badger especially, so many plays, he was so encouraging of the women singing and performing and you dancing,
doing drama
and
plays,
everything. And we just did it, and Gurudev was like,
he loved it.
He loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you did. Tulsi did the play. It was a scene from the Jaiva Dharma book. You were Sannyasi Thakur.
Yeah.
And Madan Mohini was
Premdas
Babaji.
Yeah.
And it's it's the first chapter where everything is revealed to Sannyasi Thakur of, you know, becoming a devotee.
And I gave my all to that role. And then at the end of each play in Badger every year, like, you know, we'd be done with the play, right? And everyone would give their pranam and everything like that. But that year, Madan and I were sitting next to each other because she had arranged that play for that year. And Gurudev was at the Vyasa. And he was like he was motioning with his hand like this. To come. And we were like, she and I like crawled up. So then we had gone up to his seat, and he just put his arms around us. And we were like, oh my God. And everyone was like, Haribol. But it's just to show that, like, his mood and his personality, he would do things like that. He was very spontaneous, very out of the box. I feel like every time I interacted with him, he was like, he always made you feel like you were the only person in the room.
Yeah, he gave time to everybody.
He would make you feel so special. And that's how I felt, you know, like, yeah. My interactions with him, he was always very dramatic. Like,
oh, really?
Like, one time in Florida, he was like, will you be in the drama play? I think it was like after that year or something. He was just like, will you be in the drama? I literally showed up. I was like in jeans and a t-shirt. I was like, Gurudev, y'all, come on. Like, I just got here. I don't even know what plays they're doing. Anyway, very sweet. Fast forward to 2010, that last year. I'll just say this briefly. That was the last Badger Festival that he attended, 2010. I didn't know about all the talks or what was going on about him leaving or anything like that. I just knew that, like, he was going back to his quarters one night. This was in Badger Festival. I finished playing violin for one of the plays, so I just ran. I just ran over so I could catch him. I still had my violin in my hand. I just put it down. When Gurudev was walking, I put my head down, and then to my surprise, when I got up, he was still standing there. Still standing there in front of me, and he's like, "Are you okay?" You know, I think I just broke up with my boyfriend or something. I don't know what I did. Just to get there. I went through everything just to get there that year. It was, you know, it took something to be there. Yeah. Somehow he knew, you know, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I looked around. I was just like, where else would I rather be here but here with you? You know, I said, "I am now, Gurudev, I'm here," you know, like, and then he started laughing, and Maharaj was behind him. They were like laughing at me. And he was like, "Very good, very good." He's like, "Very good." And they just walked off. And then I was just like, for some reason, I had gotten like some sort of, like, we call them downloads, some sort of intuition. I was like, oh, snap. I think he's going to leave. Because wow. I heard some things about how he's sick and this and whatever, and I was like, I think he's going to go. I think this really is his last year, you know? And so from there, so many mystical things, no? Like, from there, I was like, okay, I made sure that I gone, you know, I got there the tail end of Kartik. This is all still 2010. I was on the East Coast. I relocated before that winter.
To California?
I relocated to California.
Oh, wow.
That year. Because I was like, Gurudev's going to leave. Somehow I knew.
You wanted to be around.
And I wanted to be. So that year, at the end of Kartik, was able to make it to India and whatever. And then I had stayed at one temple in Vrindavan. Jadharani Shamarani Didi was there. A bunch of other female devotees. There was a lot of female devotees at that mat. We were there. We were editing a book. I'll talk about that book later too. We're editing a book, and then Srila Gurudev leaves. December 29, 2010, he leaves. Everybody's devastated. It was like mad chaos. Everyone was trying to, like, you know, figure out, okay, we gotta whatever. I had saved whatever monies I had to make my car payments, and now I had to buy a flight to Navadvip. So I was like, forget the car, gotta go to the Samadhi, get on the plane. We get to Navadvip. You can only imagine, right? It was crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I heard it was
there was a lot. It was a lot going on, and that same heat and energy I felt after, you know, we took Gurudev in the Parikram or whatever, and I felt that same energy again. But it was like, this time, he's no longer physically, you know, with us. So I was like, it was the most, like, intense moment, significant moment of my life. I would say the two significant moments of my life were meeting him and then when he went into Samadhi. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And just like that.
Yeah. But he's still here, of course.
Of course. That was actually all the Harikatas that came after that he was put in Samadhi were all about, he's still with us. And Srila Gurudev also said, I'll be closer to you than the air you breathe.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, Gurudev, you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my story.
So I love your story because it's similar to mine, but a little different perspective. Because you came as a seeker.
And you grew up in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're coming from the outside in, if you will, even though you were born a devotee in the movement. But yeah, mine was, it was interesting because for me, Prabhupada was very strongly in my life, of course, because my grandmother is a Srila Prabhupada disciple, Mother Subudhi Devidasi. And my father grew up in the ISKCON temple in Toronto as one of the youngest boys in the Brahmachari ashram, as a 9-year-old, as an 8 or 9-year-old. So he grew up there, like washing the Brahmachari's clothes and setting up the Tulsi puja. So, and my grandfather was against Krishna consciousness, and him and my grandmother had a lot of difficult marriage. So he kind of left them, and she was alone in a foreign country in Canada. We're from India, and with 3 kids.
Wow.
And so they all basically took shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and literally Srila Prabhupada made a home for them that they could live in. So for us, for me, growing up in Prabhupada was like my grandfather.
Yeah.
Very much so. And even with my father, I've heard so many stories from him of Srila Prabhupada spending extra attention on them, giving them cookies specifically first and calling them over because he knew they didn't have a father.
Yeah.
So, and my father had so many interactions as a kid with with Srila
like a
Prabhupada.
family member. So
So he was very much growing up. Prabhupada was, if not the first, one of the first words I learned. Paupa, I'd say paupa, paupa. So I love Srila Prabhupada, and I grew up in the Toronto temple. And I'd get in trouble also climbing his Vyasa-san and sitting with him. And I reigned on that temple. That temple was my temple. I was just a baby waddling around and just like there. I was babysat by God knows how many devotees. My grandmother was doing her seva, you know, because my parents, they actually lived in LA. So I lived with my grandma mostly as a child. Anyway, growing up, you know, doing my thing, having a great time in the temple. And I never thought of Guru, actually. I never had that idea of I need to take initiation. And I think this is common for a lot of Guru Kulis, actually, because having that connection with Srila Prabhupada and having family that are Prabhupada disciples, I felt so complete. I didn't think I needed a Guru. And also, no one had really explained initiation or Gurus that much to me. So that's just like, I didn't think about having a Guru. I was just complete, happy, doing my thing. I was a kid. I moved back to LA and New Dwarka, ISKCON LA. I started going to Gurukul there. And some of my friends, unbeknownst to me, who were kids my age, had taken shelter of Srila Gurudev already.
Oh, wow.
And their family members. And I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of them were being kicked off of the block of Watsika on those apartments.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this was 2000. This was the time.
That was the time.
This was probably 99, 2000, around this time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know much. I'm just playing with my friends, but my family hears that Srila Narayana Maharaj is in Badger, coming in June. In New Bridge, which is not far from Los Angeles. So my family, my father especially, being from an Indian background, growing up in like being around Vaishnavas, devotees, we always have that culture of sadhu is sadhu. We're going to go see the sadhu. No pressure. We're not taking initiation. We're not going. We're just coming to see him. We hear that he's close to Prabhupada and there's some relationship there. So we're going to go. I was 7. My dad, you know, took me in the car back when there was MapQuest. We got lost because it's the middle of nowhere, literally the middle of nowhere, and we got there at night, so we couldn't see. And anyway, we finally made it, and in the morning time, we had a private darshan. It's not, you know, a meeting with Gurudev in his room. And my father was sitting below him. Gurudev was on his chair. They were talking, and I was in the way back of the room. And Gurudev, from time to time, would look at me very intently with his laser beam eyes, and I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable. Just like, what does he want? Am I doing something wrong? And he kept looking at me periodically, staring at me.
You're just like, all right.
I was just like. Then after that, the darshan was over. The meeting was over, and Gurudev gave Harikatha. I didn't attend. I played hide and go seek. I was just running around, having time with my friends. And my friend Radhika, who's our god sister, was taking Harinam initiation at that time. She must have been 8 or 9.
Wow.
Taking her first initiation. So I was like, oh, you're here. And seeing some of my friends from school, from Gurukul, were at the festival.
You're like, okay, cool.
So I'm like, okay, let's play.
At least you had friends at the festival.
Well, yeah, it's true.
That's good.
I did have a few. And
but yeah, it's good.
we were only there for a day. We left after the class, and we saw Gurudev again one more time on his way to the airport at this hotel he was speaking at. We came at the very end. We missed the entire class. My mom, my sister, we were all late. So we gave pranam, and that was it. And then I moved back to Canada. So I didn't see Gurudev for several years.
Really?
Yeah, that was it. It's just That was the impression I had of Srila Narayana Maharaj.
I didn't know you moved back to Canada.
So I moved back to Canada for middle school.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I really started getting more involved in the seva at the temple.
Yeah.
And I directed puppet shows for the Sunday school, and we performed puppet shows. I wanted to be like the Gita Nagari old puppet shows. I'm like, I'm going to recreate that. I was very ambitious. I was doing graphic design as a kid, doing flyers for Janmashtami and Radhastami. I don't know. I was really, I was in the seva. I was having a good time.
Yeah.
And I think somehow around that point, and it's Srila Prabhupada's mercy and also all the service I think I was doing in the temple, that I started asking, okay, I love Krishna. I love all these festivals. I love everything, the drama plays. I was doing plays with Bhakti Marg Swami. I was very active. But what is this all about? What is bhakti actually? What is love of Krishna? What does this mean? Is it real? Like, what is this? And I think that inquisitiveness, that question in my heart was there. And literally, Krishna arranged everything. Prabhupada arranged everything at that point. Because right at that time, 2 disciples of Srila Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami Maharaj. They were from Mexico. They were immigrating to Canada. And my grandmother was the house that anybody stayed in if they needed help. So she said, open arms, you can stay in our basement. And me being a teenager, I was just like, we just never have private space, another devotee. Our house was teeming with devotees in the attic, in the basement, in the guest bedroom, in the garage. Like, my grandma's like...
Typical.
It's everywhere, because we lived really close to the temple. But anyway, they were really sweet couple. At first, I was like, I'm not sure. You know, I was sussing them out. And they were really sweet, actually. And husband was a flamenco guitarist. Wife was a flamenco dancer. Super fun. Shout out to them, Bhadra Mataji and Raghava Prabhu. They've dropped off the face of the earth for me. I don't know where they are. I've tried to keep in contact, but
if anybody knows.
If anybody knows, I owe them a lot in my life. And they basically took me in as their child. They'd feed me amazing dinners and take me out to see flamenco guitar. And it was great. Cool. For a teenager, I was like, these are cool people.
Yeah, that's
cool devotees, not the weird devotees. There are those. Anyway, and then they also were really interested in Harikatha. They loved Harikatha. And they were working on translating their Guru Maharaj's books into Spanish.
Okay.
So I would come every evening. That was the routine. After school, I'd come over, they'd feed me, and then we would watch videos of all different acharyas, like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj, Srila Narayana Maharaj, and we would read things, and they would ask me questions and kind of see how much I know, and then fill in the gaps and teach me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was so sweet. They were so sweet. And you know, more and more, I got the appetite for Harikatha. It became like, oh, this is amazing. And it became like 4 hours a night.
Became like regular and normal for
But
you.
a lot, like 4 hours speaking Harikatha like every night. For a 13-year-old, that's like a lot.
Right.
But I really feel it was Prabhupada and Krishna's mercy at that time. And then I started listening to lectures in MP3 player with a burned CD. Those.
Yeah.
And I was in my middle school, I would print all the lectures from Pure Bhakti, from Gurudev's lectures. I'd print them when no one was looking, hundreds of pages, and be reading them, finishing my classwork and reading them. I know, like no one was looking. I'm like, I'm doing schoolwork, research project. Yeah, so I was reading, and then it really hit me hard that I need a guru. This is like the next step.
Yeah.
And I was so attracted to Gurudev specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And of course I had met him. He was the only one out of the ones I was listening to I'd met. I didn't really put it together though fully because I was young. It didn't click yet.
Right.
But I started going to the temple and sharing what I was reading with my friends like you did. We all know We all know what happens. So I'm sharing with my friends and I'm loving what I'm hearing and they're loving it too. They're like, cool. It was only like 1 or 2 friends. It wasn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was reading it to them. And then whispers started happening from the parents. The parents are like, she's bad news. She is spreading poison. Stay away from her. She's bad association. So I started feeling that. And even some Prabhupada disciples were making comments to my grandmother, who was, forgot to say, temple president at the time.
I mean, that's rough because she's like in that position.
She was temple president at the time. And she was for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And You know, I'm sure she had meetings where she was told what the rules are if you encountered Gurudev disciples or if people were speaking about Srila Narayana Maharaj. And I found out later one of our god sisters was staying in the temple around that time, distributing Prabhupada's books, but she had spoken about Gurudev to one or two friends at the temple, and my grandmother kicked her out.
Excommunicado.
Excommunicado. So it was, I didn't know this at the time, I was a kid, but I found out later what was happening at the time. I didn't know that she was there, but I was having my own experience with Gurudev.
Yeah.
So you could imagine my grandmother feeling a lot of pressure. And one day she came up to me and I was listening to a lecture in the kitchen. She's like, "Who are you listening to every day? Babaji's? What's going on?" And I was like, God, what is going on? Like, that's...
Yeah.
And then she's like, "You're always going downstairs in the basement and for hours." And I could really feel she was getting very defensive. It wasn't coming from a place of concern. It was fear. It was fear.
Oh, yeah.
Big fear.
That makes sense.
And I started, you know, I'd read a lot of Shastra at that point, talking about if you hear anyone who blasphemes your guru, you should not look at their face. If you hear any bad things about your guru, you should cut that person's tongue. You should not eat anything from anyone who blasphemes your guru. At that point, I felt Gurudev was my guru.
Okay.
I really started feeling that. I was like,
Okay.
I'm going to protect this.
You're already there.
I'm going to protect this desire.
Yeah.
And something is not right of how this is being dealt with. So I stopped eating at the temple. And I stopped eating my grandma's cooking, which is a big deal for a Punjabi grandma. I grew up on her parantas. So she would cook for me and I would sneak it away and not eat it and give it to the birds or the squirrels. And I started cooking for myself.
Yeah.
And just being like, I'm going to do it. And mind you, I thank these devotees because they were very encouraging. Not in a bad way, like, yeah, get them. It wasn't like that. It was like, trust your heart. If you want Gurudev as your Gurudev, do not let anyone stop you. So they really supported me in that. And so this was happening. I would go to the Sunday feast, but I would just wash pots and kind of be a loner and just not eat and just eat at home, cook at home. And I was having tension, like, I don't want to be here anymore because I can't grow in this environment. And I had this desire, Srila Narayana Maharaj is going to be my guru. And shortly after that, my father calls me up. And we hadn't been talking. We weren't in touch. We didn't stay in touch a lot. And he said, "Guess what, Malini? Srila Narayana Maharaj is coming to our house in Los Angeles next month."
Oh my God.
And I don't know what came out of my mouth, but it was screaming, it was joy, it was disbelief. And I said, "I'm moving back to LA. I'll be there.
Wow.
I'm moving back. I'm done with Toronto. I can't be here anymore." And so I finished my exams early. I was 8th grade. I didn't go to graduation. I just turned 14.
Wow.
And I moved back to LA, and it was tense. My grandmother really was upset. She's saying, "You left Prabhupada."
Oh my God.
And to my father too, when she found out, my father, at the same time, he was going to Gurudev's temple at Venice Beach in LA. Unbeknownst to me, we were both
So she's like, "You all left Prabhupada.
You're all leaving Prabhupada." And of course,
no.
she's TP. And I realized, I was thinking about this, why was she so upset? And I realized it wasn't about the philosophy or what we were doing. I was her trophy child, her grandkid, in the temple, involved in everything, in all the plays. And now she can't gloat about me or talk about me because it would be a shameful thing to speak about. So I really understood. I mean, I didn't fully understand at the time, but later on it came clear that was the painful thing. I was leaving the tribe and I couldn't be talked about I wasn't a glorified thing anymore. I wasn't a trophy. I was a traitor. I went from trophy to traitor real fast. And so, but that's why it still felt right to me because it was all external reasons why I shouldn't go. It wasn't for my soul. Those disciples looked out for me. They cared. They wanted me to grow. No one else really was interested in having me grow on a deep level. It was more like fit in with the group, which is okay. That's what it was. That's how I felt. They took an interest in me, and I was led with my heart and intuition to Gurudev. And then I realized I had met him. Then it all was like, oh, he is my guru. He is the one. He is the one. He looked at me, that look, he already claimed me. I just am remembering now. It's time.
Oh, wow.
And so I moved to LA, and then We didn't know how to host Gurudev. Some of his entourage came a day early. They're like, okay, we're going to show you how it goes, because it's a whole operation. He comes with many devotees. But it was great. And Radhika was there, our god sister, and we stayed up all night getting the bed and house ready and this ready, that ready. And then when Gurudev came through the front door, and it actually not the front door, it was the front gate. I saw him in the garden, in the front yard. And the first thing he said is, "How are you?" And I mean, what do I say? How am I doing after all that, though?
Yeah.
Because he knew it all. I felt when he said that, he saw it all. How are you now?
Yeah.
And I didn't even say anything much. I think I said just Hari Bol. I couldn't. I was his presence was so overwhelming at that time. I was speechless. I was literally just speechless. And I gave him a garland that I had made, and I remember he said, "Did you offer this to Radha and Krishna?" And I said, I didn't.
You're like, oops.
And he's like, "Go offer it to Radha Krishna." And then I offered it, and then he said, "Did you offer it now?" I said, "Yes, I did," and he put it on. Yeah. And then we all took initiation in our backyard. We did. And funny enough, one devotee from Toronto also showed up and took initiation, and I knew him from the temple. I was like, "You're here?" He's like, "Yeah, taking initiation from Gurudev."
Wow.
But we took it, and we took Harinam, and the way Gurudev, it was just such a beautiful day, and he was talking about Krishna playing his flute, and I remember looking at his hands, and I had just started learning dance, classical dance.
Oh, you just started
Bharatanatyam. I was always a dancer and performer, but Bharatanatyam I just started learning, and he was using the mudra, and I was like mesmerized, and I just felt he is seeing Krishna. He's not just acting. He's seeing Krishna when he's doing this, and I can trust him fully. And my whole body was having shivers the entire time. I was sweating. My whole sari was wet. And I was bawling the whole time. I remember it was such a visceral experience. I was literally like this the whole time. I was like, I couldn't handle it. It was so powerful. From now on out is fully taken care of. You are on your way back home, back to Godhead. Gurudev has your hand. You have nothing to worry about. And I'm seeing someone who is seeing Krishna. Like, I felt all this in my body, and I was like, it was overwhelming. My body couldn't handle it. And then the Harinam finished, first initiation, and all the Harinam people leave. And now the people for Diksha are going to stay for the second initiation. And my dad was going to get Diksha. Now, mind you, my dad wanted initiation from Prabhupada. He wanted it from Prabhupada. Yeah. But he was too young. Yeah. Prabhupada disappeared when he was 12, and that was the age you can start getting initiated by Prabhupada. Aww. So he had so much time with...
He had so much,
Yeah, Prabhupada gave him a garland. With him. My dad gave Prabhupada a garland.
I mean, even that's like, what? Like, so, you know? So young.
My dad had taken initiation in ISKCON, but it always felt more like a formality. I can't speak for him fully, but he did what he needed to do to be on the altar and do the initiation.
And he had that association.
But for him, Prabhupada was his guru. Yeah. He wasn't interested in another guru. But when he met Gurudev, something really hit him. And actually, it was because when Gurudev first talked to him, he spoke in Hindi and said, "Will you become my beautiful young boy?" And my dad says, immediately he felt Prabhupada talking to him as the young boy.
Oh my God.
So
oh my God.
It was the first time again that he felt Prabhupada like that. And when he touched Gurudev's feet, he said it felt exactly like Prabhupada's feet, because he remembers how the skin was, the butteriness, the softness. So he wanted to take initiation immediately after that. It was like, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks or says. Yeah. He's taking. So my dad was taking Diksha. Because he was way qualified for it. He's ready for it. Yeah. But the Prabhupada disciple, Nischinta Prabhu, who was talking to my dad about Gurudev, it was Nischinta Prabhu. Yeah, it was him. He said, "Give Malini Diksha also, Gurudev." And then here I am. I'm like, ugh. And Gurudev looks at me and he puts his eyebrow up and he waits. It's like an awkward silence for like a minute almost. And he goes like this. And I could feel I am not qualified for this. I'm not ready for Diksha.
Right.
But he says, "Okay, bring the mother."
Interesting.
So my mother, me, and my dad got Diksha. My sister was too young. She didn't take. But I am so thankful for that. I know I didn't deserve that, but that was Gurudev's speciality. He gave initiation to those who didn't necessarily deserve it at the time, but he was like, "I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm accepting you, and I'm going to be with you as you grow." That's how I felt when I got it. It's like, I know you're not ready, you know, but I'm accepting you.
Right.
So, and you know, Diksha is a school. It's not like you get Diksha and you get pure devotee. It's like, it's called the school of Diksha when you get your
you're
harana.
practicing.
You're practicing.
You have to
Real
practice your
Diksha.
mantra.
Real Diksha means you get Divya Gyan, you get transcendental knowledge. So most people, when they take Diksha, they're not at that Diksha point. It's the school of Diksha.
Yeah.
Anyway, that night,
That's a good
when
point.
I chanted my first Diksha mantras, I had an amazing dream of Gurudev. An incredible dream. And Gurudev, I won't get into it, but basically, he was doing the work in my heart. He was like, I got you.
Like now you're connected.
Now I'm connected. It was amazing.
And it was like, came in your dream.
It was, yeah. And when I came, so that was 2006. So it was close to 2010. It wasn't many years. And Gurudev stayed at our house, I believe, 3 times. 6, 7, 8, 10. 4 times. It was amazing. He stayed a few days every time, just 3-4 days before he went to Badger. And just every time he would be with me, he would encourage me. And he said, one time he said, what is the definition of pure bhakti?
Oh my God.
And I was like,
How old are you?
This was the first time I met him, 14. I mean, the first time he stayed. And I was like, devotional service, you know, like done purely with love, you know, something. And he's like, no, anya bila shita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavitam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttama. Rupa Goswami's definition of bhakti. And he said, I want you to know all these things nicely. And he said, oh, you're very qualified. You know, just saying very sweetly, very qualified. He'd say that, very qualified. You should know all these things.
Right.
And then when I was 18, this is the last year of Srila Gurudev, I got to perform for him, dance. That was the only time I danced for him.
Really?
Because I was just coming to Gurudev Sangha, and I really didn't, I was in high school, so I didn't get to travel everywhere.
And then you had just started Bharatanatyam and
just
everything.
A few years back.
Oh
and
my God.
I didn't know the Sangha that much, except for Radhika and a few others.
Right.
I was like you also. I'm like, I had to make friends. It was a whole new world.
Yeah, it was a new world.
I didn't go to ISKCON temples. After I got initiation, I stopped going to the ISKCON temple. Like I wasn't, so it was like a whole new life. I had to figure out socially. There's so many bhajans, and there's amazing lady singers. I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this. I was very intimidated. And I was young. But I got to dance in 2010 in Badger for him. That was the last and only time I got to dance for him. I know. But I danced for him, and it was the Mahaprabhu bhajan, Jadi Gauranga Nahito. If Mahaprabhu had not come, what would we have done?
Wow.
And I danced that dance, and he came up to my father, and he said, in Hindi, she has learned very well. She has been trained very well in dance. Because Gurudev was very particular.
I know.
You know, like he wanted everyone to know rag, like those who were singers or who were inclined that way, learn the rag and ragini, learn harmonium, learn mridanga.
Get good at your art.
Play properly, do nicely. He wasn't like, anything goes. We accept the heart of it. No, it's like, do it nicely. Like he would grab kartals out of people's hands if they could not play properly.
Wow.
Yeah, in parikrama he'd be like, you know, or he said, I want you to play mridanga, because he knew he was expert at that. So he told my dad, I learned well.
Yeah.
And then on his way back out of Badger to LA, that was going to be, he had already said, this is my last tour. And he was going to leave America forever. That was basically what he had said. So I had the fortune of going and seeing him on his way before he went to LA, to the airport, to Ojai, which is in between LA and Badger, where Radhika's grandparents had a house. And he was kind of doing a retreat. It was him to rest. It was for him to rest, for no guests to come. And then he would go to the airport. So I got to stay a few days. Nice. And it was Father's Day. It was Father's Day. So Radhika and I, of course, she's so good at this. We made, and her mom is so good at this, Manjari, Lassi. We made a garland for Gurudev for Father's Day. And we did a mini Guru Puja with a play, and we just wished him a happy Father's Day. So and he loved that. Like one time, this didn't happen directly to me, but one time there was a Father's Day in Badger, and all the girl disciples of Gurudev wrote cards and garlands and flowers. So and Gurudev came back from the morning walk with all the men. And he's like, what is this Father's Day? Like in America, you know, we celebrate. He's like, is this only for daughters and fathers? And like, no,
because it was all the girls.
Yeah, and he's like, no, Gurudev, it's actually for sons and daughters. He's like, oh, my daughters love me so much. And I love my daughters so much. Even more than the boys, he'd say. So we had with his daughter disciples, there was always that sweetness that he gave, like extra sweet. Of course, he loved his sons, but he always made sure he's like, I love you guys. So at that time, we did the Guru Puja, like a mini, cute, little, simple puja. And then Radhika had this idea, we're going to recite verses to Gurudev, because he loves that.
Yeah.
And I was like, Radhika, like, so I had driven up that day. I was just 18, got my license.
Right.
And I started memorizing a verse while I'm driving. And I'm like, da 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 da. It was like a Bhagavad Gita verse. So Radhika recited her verse. She's all good. And then it comes to my turn, and I completely go blank. It's just like... So it's an awkward silence for like 30 seconds or a minute of just silence. Like me trying to do my verse. And then Gurudev is sitting on a couch.
Oh my God.
And he puts his feet out like this. And starts going like this. He's like, you dance? You dance? He said that. He said, you dance, that is your verse. And so I felt, he just, like the one time I danced, it was like not perfect, not great, but he saw everything in the future. And he knew that would be the last time I would see him. So he said, that is your verse. And he was so sweet.
Dancing.
And I realize now, everything I've done in my life with dance, which has taken me so far around the world, meeting so many devotees, and whatever, maybe inspiring some people, and also the younger women who are dancers. I've been very blessed to have that opportunity to serve, but I give all credit to Gurudev.
Same here with music.
He saw I had that inclination, but it's not just going to be art. You are going to realize Krishna through this art.
Wow.
By saying it's my verse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because then I realized later as I dance, I have to learn the words of the bhajan. I have to learn what I'm dancing. Right. And that means not just
it's
dancing
not just the performance.
No, I listen to the classes about these topics. I deepen. And it's now a physical, full embodiment of that story, pastime, or Harikatha. Yeah. And so I feel like Gurudev saw that and like blessed it fully. So that was the last time I spent with him. And that's why I hold dance very seriously as a seva, because he didn't give me too many instructions. He told me one other thing, and he said this to many devotees. I said, how can I please you? What can I do? He said, always chant and remember. He said this a lot to many devotees, because I wanted like a real instruction. I thought that was like, what's a real instruction? But actually chant and remember.
That's the instruction.
That is the deepest instruction, because what he's asking us to do is enter into bhajan, deep absorption, remembering these things in our hearts constantly. And that is what leads us to our perfection, to bhav and prem and all these things, is chanting the holy names and remembering. So now I realize how serious it was. It's like he gave me all these drops, and I'm just starting to excavate it and develop it. And one other thing, the last thing I'll say, he said to me, I was 18 and I had just graduated high school. I was going into college, and I asked him at the airport in LA. That was the actual last conversation in LA. I said, now I'm going into college, Gurudev, and it's hard to balance spiritual life and school and material life. Yeah. What can I do? And he said, learn well in school, become qualified, and learn all these topics like of Krishna, and then preach my mission around the world. Preach Mahaprabhu's mission around the world, he said. And so again, I'm a simple 18-year-old who knows nothing. Gurudev never saw the limitations of anybody when he spoke these things. Yeah. He saw the whole future. And he gave the license to be like, do not think small. You are not small. You are a maidservant of Srimati Radhika. He wanted us to think like that. That we are, if we put our mind to it and serve in that way, we can accelerate so fast. And so from the very 5-year-old, he would speak like that, to the 80-year-old Prabhupada disciple. Yeah. It's true. He encouraged like that. So everyone. My whole life is indebted to him, really, completely, fully.
Likewise. Absolutely. Wow. So beautiful.
And I will say one thing. His mood has influenced. So his mission was to help Prabhupada disciples and help all of us go deeper. I hadn't gone to ISKCON temples for years. And then slowly I started going back. for whatever reason, things started becoming a little easier. After Srila Gurudev left, the tension subsided a little more. And what unfortunately, it happened that way.
No, I noticed that too.
But what I noticed, I started noticing in ISKCON, some of the lectures or ways things were presented were more familiar to what Gurudev had spoken. And it was so interesting because the way I grew up in ISKCON was very different. Not very different, but the emphasis of what was emphasized in the Harikatha, you're not this body, reincarnation, karma, the Bhagavad Gita, like really focusing on that. And Gurudev was criticized often for speaking about the Rasa Lila or Radharani and speaking of the Goswami's books and not Prabhupada's books. I started realizing, oh, now I'm hearing some of the things Gurudev said are now in the mainstream society of ISKCON. And I started, at first I was a little bit, it kind of made me feel a little interesting because I felt, oh, now he's gone and now it's, you know, easy to just say these things. But
they were being like held back.
Yeah.
They were actually being held back because I actually remember after the Samadhi, when we had gone back to Vrindavan, all these brahmacharis were coming from ISKCON actually requesting books.
Wow. Yeah.
They were like, we can get the books now. Like, it's okay, it's safe.
I see.
Like, it was like okay to, like, I mean, mind you,
it felt less dangerous, like less risky.
Yeah, maybe.
With consequences. Yeah. But not only the GBC, but many, many, many people in ISKCON were reading Gurudev's books when he was still on the planet. And
a lot of them apologized also.
Right, they did. Before he left, they came to him. That's right. But I was going to say, throughout Gurudev's tour, many people within ISKCON were behind closed doors reading Gurudev's books.
Oh, okay.
Many, because he was opening up. I remember when I read Gurudev's, why I was so attracted to Gurudev, when I read his books and went back to Prabhupada's books, it was almost like Prabhupada's book was a different book. Because Gurudev gave the lens, he kind of gave a certain insight into what the whole point was. Whereas I feel like as a new devotee or someone who doesn't know, when you read Prabhupada's books, you can read Prabhupada's books in any qualification. That's what's amazing about his books. You can be like the highest of the high or the base,
and it's like, wow.
Lowest denominator. It's a wow.
Yeah.
But when Gurudev said, well, this is what our line is about, more specifically, like getting into the details of it, when I went back to Prabhupada's books, I was like, oh, Prabhupada's saying the same thing. He's saying it everywhere. But it's all hidden. It's all in English. You don't know the Sanskrit or the verse because it's all like in this, and he's doing it in such a way where it's touching on it, so it doesn't confuse.
Prabhupada was so expert at
that. So expert. Like, so then when I saw that, I was like, he's saying...
Like everything is there.
Everything is there, 100%. But Gurudev said this.
And it's like hidden too.
Gurudev said this. He said, everything is in Prabhupada's books, but there is a chest with jewels inside with a locked key for some of the deep hidden gems in it.
There you go.
And he said, and I have the key.
He
says, I will help you unlock these to understand the gems that Prabhupada had dug into the books. And when he first came on tour, even throughout his tour, but especially in the beginning, he would have Prabhupada disciples read Prabhupada's books, and then Gurudev would comment on it. He said, we're not reading from any other book. We're reading Nectar of Instruction. We're reading Bhagavatam. We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada's translations. And he would comment and basically bring out a whole new opening, portal to what Prabhupada's books were really trying to tell his disciples and the future generations. So anyway, when I started seeing like more and more ISKCON accepting the Goswami literatures, and also they're translating a lot more of those Goswami literatures and having more access and reading Gurudev's books.
It's great.
I started realizing at first I was like, oh, like it's sad that Gurudev didn't get credit for this, you know, or things like that. But then I realized Gurudev's mission has been so successful. And that Gurudev is so happy that Srila Prabhupada's disciples and his generations of disciples and his institution are sharing these truths. That is what Prabhupada wanted them to know. And so Gurudev, whether people have interacted with his books or not, they're influenced and they don't even know it. Because when I hear people speaking about the kunjas, or the sevas of the gopis, or the Braja Bhakti and Sakhas, and even the initiated names of a lot of even ISKCON are a lot of Braj names now. Before it was like, you know, Prabhupada would give very interesting names like Prayaraka and like very Uttama Shloka, like these kind of names. He'd give very interesting names.
Right,
and now I'm seeing like even in ISKCON, all their names are like Subal Saka and Rati Manjari. So I saw that. I'm like, that's what Gurudev named a lot of us. So it's like there's a similar blending. But I credit Gurudev to that, actually. And even Radha Kripa Kataksha Stavaraj. He had us sing that every day, Gurudev, and every festival. And Govinda Damodar Madhaveti. All of these songs. So when I see it kind of in the global Vaishnav world more, I'm like, oh, that was Gurudev. That is Gurudev.
Exactly.
And whether people want
Gurudev's there.
even if people want to give credit or not, that's not the most important thing. That's on them to like contemplate. And they might have received it from another devotee, from another devotee, so they don't know the source of it. But it's Gurudev.
It don't matter.
It's Gurudev. And so
it doesn't matter because the purpose of what he came to give, people are receiving.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And it's continuing to happen.
Yeah.
And Gurudev really is a Shiksha Guru for the world in this way. He continues to be. And I encourage anybody, for his books, lectures, and we'll put a bunch of things in below that will be resources. Because he really, for the Western audience, this is how I feel. Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, many people tried to preach to the West. Not many, but a few were sent. And not so successful. Minimally successful. Like, not to disrespect. But Srila Prabhupada was chosen to be alone. To be the one that stood out to preach to the entire world. To bring Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
We'll all always be indebted.
And to bring the Maha Mantra. And to help everyone. And I strongly feel Srila Gurudev has had special permission, being specially chosen to share the glories of Srimati Radharani and her
Even
gopis.
other acharyas confirming also.
Yes,
like,
I believe it was
the one.
I believe it was Srila Bhaktivedanta Puri Goswami Maharaj, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I think, or Bhakti Pramod, I think it's Bhaktivedanta Puri Goswami Maharaj, who said, we cannot speak so openly about Radharani. Because Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada was heavy. He's like, you have to be careful with this. He said, but Srila Narayana Maharaj has special permission. He can do. And so nowadays we say Radhe, Radhe, or all these things. It is not to be taken lightly. This is very high. This is Krishna's heart. Radharani is Krishna's heart.
That's what everyone says in Vrindavan. Radhe, Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe, Radhe. This is very, but this is the heart of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Is Radharani and her maidservants, because we're in that line.
Because she's high as devotee of Krishna.
But also in our line, she is like, the parampara is coming from her. Her maidservants are our parampara. And so Gurudev had that special permission to almost bring that out in the open. And getting flack and sacrificing his reputation, everything for that. And dealing with a lot of difficulty.
And for Srila Prabhupada.
But he said himself, if I do not give this, everything will be lost. And he says, I'm only speaking for a few of you in the audience. But for the rest of you, keep it in your heart pocket. And the time will come when you can really cultivate that desire to have that service of being under Radharani, serving Radha and Krishna. So, I just want to let everyone know that Gurudev is accessible in all ways to everyone. Still now through his teachings, and anyone who wants to enter deeper and understand Radharani and the gopis and this Raganuga Bhaktis, getting from regulated bhakti to spontaneous bhakti, how that process works, all the details of that, Gurudev has extensively spoke on this.
Right.
And actually, we should share the main things that he spoke on as bullet points. We got our bullet points.
Right.
What did he share? He shared what is the definition of pure bhakti, which we spoke.
We spoke the verse.
Anyabhilashita shunyam. All the intricacies of exactly what it is. So must listen to those classes on that. He spoke on the internal reasons of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not just to spread the holy name, but what Krishna wanted to taste, how he wanted to understand Radharani's love and glorify her and take on her color, all of that, why he came. To know your goal, that you can be chanting, doing hundreds of rounds for lifetimes, but if you don't know your goal, you will never get there. So he very much established what is our goal. Our goal is to be a servant of Radharani, serving Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So if we chant and do our service in that goal, very easily we can attain it under the guidance of Rasik Vaishnavas. And he also, his big speciality, as I said, glorifying Radharani and her moods and speaking on Braja Leela.
Right.
There's a beautiful pranam mantra of him, Shri Krishna Leela Katane Sudaksham, Audarya Madhurya Ganesha Yuktam, Varam Varanyam Purusham Mahantam, Narayanam Tvam Shirasanamami. So Shri Krishna Leela Katane Sudaksham. His main purpose in how he actually shared bhakti, his main vehicle was through Leela. And when he would speak the pastimes, time would stop. He would say at the beginning of his class, I'm taking you to Vrindavan. We are not in the US. We are not in England. We are in Vrindavan at the foothills of Govardhan by Radha Kund. And he would narrate these pastimes and it would transport us. And then we would hear these beautiful bhajans and songs of the gopis and Radha and Krishna, and we would be transported. And even though I can say for myself, I didn't understand exactly what was going on, you could feel it. You felt this is real. And Gurudev made it feel like it's possible.
It's possible, right?
It's possible to actually experience this and realize this. Have faith. And he would say, don't be weak. He would say, don't be hopeless. Continue on. And one of his main points, which I know you have a lot to say because you worked on this book, Gurudev's book, but one of the things he said is you can never control anybody else because everyone is independent. You can't control any jiva. You can't control Bhakti herself is independent. You can't control Krishna. But you can only control through love and affection. And that was one of his main teachings.
Yeah, and as we've heard, through our stories and everything, the attempt to control the flow, whether it was out of fear or preserving the institution or fear of leaving Srila Prabhupada or whatever it may have been that happened. This was the book that we had edited before I went to the Samadhi. That's the book that we were editing. It's called the Harmony Book. It was compiled, morning walks, lectures, just little excerpts of different things as Srila Gurudev spoke, speaking directly on this topic. All Hare Krishnas, from whatever groups, everyone coming together and supporting each other. We are all coming together to continue on this path of pure bhakti and getting there. And I know that sometimes, because these, topics, I guess, are like, so high and things or whatever, there are people like, oh, he's, Sahaji on this and this and that. And it's like, no, actually, he's been like ordained, divinely to speak these topics. And it's not that we are going to even realize these things right away. But
it's to preserve it for generations.
Right. And it's not like this group or that group. It's like, no, we all have something to bring to the fold. That's why we all need to work together.
Yes.
Okay? It's not that like, oh, I got to leave this group and just, no, you
or
can
we're better
add.
than you because we know more or this
No,
and
you
that.
don't lose Prabhupada. You add. Gurudev.
And we don't forget Prabhupada.
Yeah. It is.
We have,
how could we?
Yeah.
How is it possible to forget Prabhupada? Anyway, it's like we're just adding to whatever knowledge, and you add, and that's how you progress.
Right.
Anything.
But unfortunately, that's what happened in some of the history where they're on both sides, on both Gurudev's Sangha and ISKCON.
Yeah, both
there was
sides
a lot
were having problems.
Slinging mud at each other.
Yeah, a lot of mud
and a lot of pain and hurt.
Which our younger generation's not really into.
No, I know.
We're just like, whatever.
But it's good for us to address so we know it happened. Just because for those who sometimes they come to a temple and they're like, well, why is there something like different between you guys?
Yeah.
Like, and so they don't know and they're just like, what's going on? And so, yes, there was unfortunately on both sides, and it's not like one is bad, one is good. It's like people slung mud, and Gurudev was so particular not to criticize.
Never.
He's like, don't criticize. He said, they're like my children.
No, he said, Gurudev said, don't criticize. If you criticize, you have one finger pointing, and you have one finger pointing out, but 3 are coming back at you.
Yes.
Don't criticize.
And a bridge, when you're pointing, a bridge is created by that that pointing.
Yeah.
And all the bad qualities of someone will come into your heart.
All those bad qualities that you're talking about are going to come into
So he said, do not. But
So
unfortunately, you know, people did. And there was a lot of heat and pain. Yeah. And we want to heal that. That's what this whole thing is about.
That's what we're all about.
Harmony and healing and seeing everyone, the good in everyone, and encouraging each other. Because we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We're aspiring. Both of us are aspiring. We're not scholars in this matter.
Right.
But we've been impacted so heavily by Gurudev.
Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada and all the devotees who've helped us in our journey. Yes. And I've learned so much from so many devotees on different institutional lines. Yeah. And I actually don't like, I get very disturbed, even when I go to India, because I spend a lot of time in Vrindavan. Right. Especially Indians, they'll go like, ISKCON or Gaudiya Math? And I'm like,
God, it's like, stop
and
it.
when I say they're the same, I said, I'm both. They're like, both? No, alag cheez hai, they're different. It's like, no, they're not. And so, yes, we have institutional differences and rules and managerial, but Gurudev said this. He's like, what is the real ISKCON? The International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yeah. He's like, therefore, we're all ISKCON.
We are all, he says, I am ISKCON too.
We are all ISKCON.
Narada Muni is ISKCON. Vyasadeva is ISKCON. Pandavas are ISKCON. So when we see what Srila Prabhupada, so it's natural in history. Even the Gaudiya Math had so much strife when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada left. Things splinter off into like-minded groups, or to Prabhupada, Swami Prabhupada even wanted to have ISKCON part of the Gaudiya Math, but they didn't give him any attention. So he's like, okay, I got to start my own thing. So the institutional parts are there. Right. They're necessary because we live in the material world. Right. We got to have some regulation, especially when things grow with society. But
exactly.
The spiritual movement is one.
Right.
We're one spiritual movement. We're under Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's family. One love, one heart.
One love.
We're one family. And that's what I know to my bones. Gurudev, Prabhupada, the whole Guru Varga want that. For us to understand that. That is advancement. And Gurudev said advancement means you will have to always reconcile. So when there's a discrepancy or something that sounds different or a little different, we have to be open to pray for it, to not criticize, and the answers will be revealed.
Right.
If we're sincere.
Right.
And Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, sincerity is invincible. So if we're sincere, the truth will come out. We don't have to worry. But if we start criticizing or going down propaganda or becoming sectarian, which Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur says is the death of Vaishnavism, is sectarianism.
Yeah.
So we can't get into those things, and that's for everyone. There's no pointing fingers. Like I said, there's been hurt on both sides of Gurudev and Prabhupada, like the Sanghas. There has been misunderstandings.
Yeah.
You know? And it's been very funny, like some of the misunderstandings, like I laugh at them now because it's like people really didn't understand them. Like for example reinitiating. None of the Prabhupada disciples were ever reinitiated, first of all.
They were not reinitiated. They were still Prabhupada disciples.
Right. And they were never stolen because they needed help and encouragement, and they went where they were nourished.
They were just getting advice and inspiration.
And Gurudev did nickname them. He did give nicknames. Because, sometimes, like I said, Prabhupada had these very interesting names. Gurudev would laugh. He would
the famous nickname, Jadurani.
Jadurani became Shamarani. Yeah. But, it was never a replacement. It was only adding. And he treated them like friends. Like, I call her Tulsi. I mean, that might not be a very bona fide nickname, but Gurudev,
a lot of people call me Tulsi.
in an affectionate way, Gurudev had nicknames and ways he would call on the Prabhupada disciples. And the speed initiation, that too. Like, I was young. And it's true, I know some people who got initiation very young, but a lot of us were born in the movement and had Prabhupada disciple family, and Gurudev saw the future. Like, for example, we have our friend, our godbrother, Rasikananda Maharaj. He took Diksha very young, but look at him now. So Gurudev saw, he knew, and that's the thing with Guru Tattva, you cannot control Guru Tattva.
Yeah.
When someone is like a Mahabhagavat like that, you can try to make rules and edicts to control how they initiate, but they're seeing the soul.
And like I said, I was in that room and I saw him.
He said no to other people. Me too. I saw that too.
The first time I ever saw him, he turned people down.
Yeah, so who he gave.
Room, so it wasn't like...
No, it wasn't everybody he gave.
It wasn't like that.
But who he gave was very intentional.
Yeah, it was intentional.
And that's my point. It's like he knew. Some of the Guru Coolies, they were ready.
And a lot of the people that were coming wanted to get initiated anyway. So
It wasn't like
there was no force involved.
He wasn't like, oh, surprise, you're
they
initiated.
They came of their own volition.
Yeah. 100%. And then, you know, the idea of him speaking 10th canto and Raskata and the Gopi Bhav Club. I remember even just someone recently told me, and it was really sweet.
When did that start?
I'm not sure, but you know, just that just the idea that like someone said, oh yeah, you can speak and share something, but just like don't speak about Gopi Bhav and all that. I was like, that's the stereotype that we immediately go into Ras Leela. And Gurudev was also very sensitive to that. He would chastise his disciples. He said, do not jump, otherwise you will be bit by the snake on the top of the tree and fall down. Yeah. So when he would speak, first of all, he has the license and permission, but also he'd be very chaste and proper and do it in such a way that it would give us a taste and desire to become qualified for that.
But also they're speaking those things, that's where they're called sahajiyas, which you were telling me it was actually the proper term is prakrit sahajya.
Prakrit sahajya.
Prakrit sahajya.
Yeah, the word sahajya means natural actually. It's not a bad word.
Okay.
It means that things come naturally, but prakrit sahajya means all this spiritual stuff is so easy. It's the same. We can experience it
in the spiritual world, and I'm a gopi.
It means they can experience it in this body. Prakrit means the matter. They think that the Leela can happen in here, and you can be a gopi now.
Right.
And that's where the sahajya comes in.
Right.
Gurudev did not say that. He said, he spoke about the stages of bhakti.
Yeah.
We know when those things manifest in the heart.
Right.
And once you hit bhav, this body has to go. Right. And you cannot get prem until you take birth in the pastimes of Krishna in the universe.
Yeah.
And then you enter and get swarup siddhi, vastu siddhi.
Right.
So he was so specific in the order of how that progression comes. And he wanted us to let us know. And he said, check your heart, especially on Ekadasi, which is today. Check your heart and see where you're at. And he said, real bhajan is knowing where you're at, not being a hypocrite. What is on the outside and inside should be the same. And if there is some dirt, that is for you to pray and cultivate and chant. That was the beautiful thing about him. It was, you gotta be real. You can't fake bhakti. With Gurudev, it's pure bhakti. It's the line. And so, he gave that to everyone in his talks.
Right.
And as the years went by, he spoke less and less about the higher topics because newer people were coming. Yeah. That was specifically for the Prabhupada disciples.
Yeah, he was always appropriate.
Very appropriate.
Yeah.
But there's so much to say about Srila Gurudev. We love him so much, and he's available to anyone even now to read his books, hear from his disciples, hear his classes, and we will give more information on that. And please forgive us.
Yeah, forgive us if anything.
Please forgive us.
We said ruffled your feathers at all, but we are also just, Malini and I just wanted to, sincerely share Gurudev's mood, and we hope that you felt some of that today. And we want to hear from you also if there's any topics or of discussion that you would like for Malini and I to have. This is an ongoing topic and discussion.
Conversation.
And there's side conversations, many different things. If there's anything that you'd like us to discuss, please let us know in the comments.
Yes.
We will love to hear from you.
And Tulsi and I want to thank you personally for your time. It's a long video, but it means a lot to us. We've been thinking about it for a long time.
Many years, actually.
And so we hope this will bring healing and harmony to our entire Gaudiya Vaishnava family and making Gurudev more accessible to all as someone who is our guardian, our protector, and our helper in Krishna consciousness. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhudevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Jai Jai Shri
Radhe.
His whole life, I served him and helped him in so many ways. I want to help the devotees as much I can.
Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Ram Krishna Hare Gaura Chandraya Radhika Jai Tadalaye कृष्णाय कृष्ण भक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमः इति किल कल्लार्थं लब्धकस्तयोर्मे निज निकट निवासं देहि गोवर्धनं मे सब लोग बोलिए निज निकट निवासं देहि गोवर्धनं Gaudiya